Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of 2021 of the Suffolk Public School Board. This is our first meeting for this year and the first regular meeting for this year. And we'd like to welcome you to our meeting. We're going to begin, if we can, with our Vice Chair, Mrs. Byram. Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Mrs. Byram. You have to unmute your mic, please.
Mr. Littlefield, could you assist Ms. Byram and unmute her mic as the host? Thank you. You're good, Ms. Byram.
You're good, Ms. Byram.
Will you join me now for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you would indulge me for just a moment, we'd like to have just a moment of silence for our nation. Just one moment of silence for our nation. Thank you. Thank you very much. At this point, we've reached a time for the approval of our agenda. This is an action item, so we need a motion for the approval of our agenda.
Madam Chair,
Excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Mitnick is recognized. Board Member
Madam Chair, I'd like to add an item to the agenda, the resignation of Board Member David Mitnick.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mitnick has asked to add his resignation to the agenda. Is there any discussion, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. This is an action item. The additions to the agenda, Mr. Mitnick has added one item.
I would like, Madam Chair, to make a motion.
Yes.
That we approve the agenda with the addition of Mr. Mitnick's resignation to new business.
Is there a second?
I second.
Madam Chair, I second the motion.
Okay, Board Member Jenkins, I think seconded first. Board Member Jenkins has seconded the motion.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. At this point in time, we do have some public speakers and they're going to join the meeting. Mr. Littlefield has made arrangements for them to join the meeting by video, so they will join us at this point in time. I believe our first speaker is Thurbia Parker Sr., a report from the hostile work environment complaint against Sherry Story.
I did not receive a connection for a therapy partner for the video unless possibly you the letter. I did not receive a connection for a therapy partner for the video unless possibly you the letter.
Mr. Littlefield, I'm not hearing you clearly.
Hello.
We don't have the connection for Thurbia Parker, nor do we have a letter. But we can go forward to Reverend Henry Diggs if he's ready.
Okay, we will hear from the second speaker, Reverend Henry Diggs, support of Dr. Gordon and Attorney Waller. Yes, sir. Reverend Diggs.
I believe we're still having some connection audio issues with Reverend Diggs. Reverend Diggs, can you hear us?
Would you raise your hand if you can hear us, Reverend Diggs? The mic has been muted. Would you unmute the mic? I can see the mic has been muted. Would you unmute that? Now it's unmuted. Go ahead. You may go ahead. It's been unmuted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, yes.
You want to speak, man?
You're speaking with the school board of Suffolk Public Schools. You may go ahead and speak now.
Okay, my name is Reverend Henry E. Diggs. I'm the president of SEMA, Suffolk Interdenomination Minister Alliance. I am here this evening to express my views and concerns to the report released by the Suffolk City Public School Board following the investigation into a hostile work environment complaint filed against the school board member Sherry D. Story. During the past year or so, there has been a series of articles in the local newspaper addressing Story disruptive behavior and disregarding for the rules and the protocol during board meeting. Superintendent of School, Dr. John B. Gordon, filed a complaint against Story July 23, 2020, alleged she had engaged in acts of confrontation, retaliation, and other behavior which have negatively affect his ability to lead his Suffolk Public School and which he had caused a hostile work environment. The investigative report from the McGuire Ward law firm confirmed the substance that Dr. Gordon alleged and noted a highly contentious relationship between the two of them. The report revealed that not only Dr. Gordon, but she treated other administrators aggressively and inappropriately, including the school board attorney. As a school board member, she is determined to obstructly and to carry out the vision of the school, Suffolk Public School. At this time, more than ever, the board members to be unified as a team to remain focused on the vision of the mission of the Suffolk Public School. I cannot believe in 2020 and now 2021, board member Sherry D. Story who has been entrusted with carrying out the vision of the Suffolk Public Schools, have chosen to display the kind of undesirable conduct as an elected official. I am positive that this type of intolerant behavior is not warranted or needed considering race relationships issues happening today. Cherry Story should resign from the Suffolk City School Board for a number of reasons. To mention a few, advocating for the removal of certain administration for no other reason than because they are African Americans. Given their overwhelming perspective, that story behavior appeal to be biased towards Black people. The report recommends that she receive racial sensitive training, violating norm and protocol of the school board after reporting warnings, making unsubstantials of certain on Facebook that Dr. Gordon received a $10,000 pay raise when he has not, which caused a negative reaction from members of the community. Aggressively confirmed Dr. Gordon during a closed meeting of the school board and outlined in the investigation report. Repeatedly interfering in the duties of the day's operation of the Suffolk Public School, which is designated responsible for the school superintendent. As a school board member, Cherry Story is determined and instructed to carry out the vision and the mission of the Suffolk City Public School. I cannot believe that in the year 2020 and the starting of 2021, Cherry D. Story, who have been entrusted with carrying out the vision of the Suffolk Public School, has chosen to display the kind of undesirable conduct as an elected official. I am positive that this type of intolerant behavior is not wanted or needed considering race relationship issues that's happening today. We cannot and will not allow.
Reverend Diggs, your time has expired.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Brooks-Buck, you're muted.
Mr. Whitfield, would you unmute your mic? There you
Yes,
go.
ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Thank you. Yes.
All right. Is it okay if I begin?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight concerning the events that has occurred on our city school board. I am sure that you, like me, reading about Cherry Story's repulsive acts and painful words with feelings of shock, dismay, and disbelief. But what happened was real, unfortunate, and very real. Ms. Cherry Story should resign from the City of Suffolk School Board immediately for the following reasons. Her misuse of office is unacceptable. She has interrupted workflow and intimidated the former and current superintendent through her constant questioning and disregard for the following policies and procedures. Her undermining efforts of the current school board superintendent in personal matters, making unsubstantiated assertions on Facebook that Dr. Gordon received a $10,000 pay raise when he had not, which caused a negative reaction from members of our community, retaliating against Dr. Gordon for having filed a hostile work environment complaint violating norms and protocols of the school board after repeated warnings. What I have read and learned concerning her actions on how she has treated children of color and our school board superintendent was a serious breach of fundamental respect, dignity, and an effort to inflict chaos and racism in our school system and on our school board. To say it was unacceptable is a true understatement. Make no mistake, she has attacked people of color. She has made every attempt to destroy the psyche of African-American children. While our city school system may be wounded for the despicable acts of her words, deeds, and actions, I have no doubt that the school board will prevail under the leadership of Dr. Gordon. Sherry's story, racist and lunacy misconduct will not win. It is our responsibility as citizens of Suffolk that we stay focused on and committed to the important work that you do to help our children learn. Once again, I would like to say that Ms. Sherry Story needs to resign from the City of Suffolk School Board immediately. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Greg Cashmart, and he would like to speak about COVID-19. Mr. Cashmart. Mr. Cashmart, unmute. Yes.
Yes,
Go
there
ahead,
we
sir.
go. Good evening. Got off to a different start there than I expected. I'd like to talk about the children. Good evening, school board teachers and staff. In relation to COVID, I saw wonderful news today that all the staff will at least be able to receive or have the opportunity to receive the vaccine. I have medical personnel in my family dealing directly with COVID patients, and I thank them every day. And they've had the opportunity to take the first dose of the vaccine, and with their second dose only days away. So I'm very thankful for that. I'd like to thank the teachers, the staff, and the doers, and with an extra special thank you to the special ed teachers for putting forth extreme effort for teaching in person and simultaneously teaching virtual this whole time. Even to today, they're still teaching in person. They deserve more than a plaque of special recognition, and they deserve more than a teacher spotlight as well. They deserve a good round of applause, and they deserve a special dinner thank you and a special retreat for these teachers doing that extra mile. I see this good for my children as well as others, because it gets us more in gear for in-person learning with their peers, just as we see them up and down the streets all hours of the day if you're over this way. I hope everyone has a good evening. I hope that we can move forward and pass some of these other things. I see a great background there of Suffolk Public Schools. I hope that we are building the best Suffolk Public Schools, and I think that should be our mission forward. I think that things that are in the past should be left in the past, and we should do everything and make an effort to get these children back in schools. They don't need it only for learning. They need it for their other developmental needs as well. They need it for exercise. They need to communicate with peers just as they're doing in the courts and cul-de-sacs and outside playing during the day as we see them in our neighborhood. Again, I hope everyone has a good evening. I hope we're driving forward. I hope that we're doing real business. And I thank you all for your hard work. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Deborah Wallstrom, and she will speak about the investigation report and corresponding resolutions. Is Dr. Wallstrom going to speak? Mrs. Gardner?
No, ma'am. There's a letter that the deputy clerk will read. from Ms.
Okay, all right, okay. We'll hear the letter now.
Good evening, board members. I am providing comments tonight about the recently posted investigative report. I have thoroughly studied the document and it provides the content for my words. I believe board members have preconceived notions of Ms. Story before she ever took her seat on the board. From the beginning of her tenure, she has been treated with disdain by the superintendent and other board members. This disdain continues to the present. As I expected, the report did not find evidence of Mrs. Story being racist, and even stated that not one of you could give a specific example of racism, yet you perceive her to be a racist. I was not an interviewee for the investigation, but I would have shared that I have mentored Ms. Story for the past 18 months. In that time, I have never, not even once, heard a racist comment from Ms. Story. Additionally, I have never heard her mention that anyone on staff needed to be fired. Instead, I have heard Ms. Story's desire for more transparent board processes, the rule of law, and the information needed to support her role as an impactful board member. Ms. Story does not ask questions of the superintendent because he is Black. She asks because he is the superintendent. Ms. Story does not question policies and contracts because Mr. Waller is Black. It is because he is the board lawyer and has responsibilities in these areas. Ms. Story does not question salary schedules and hiring decisions because Dr. Brown is Black. She asks because he is the director in charge of human resources. Through the resolution 2021-14, it will be malpractice to expect to compel board members to give up their free speech rights. The board does not have the power to remove these rights. It is also malpractice to approve a resolution that requires Ms. Story to scrummage to training in confidentiality and racial sensitivity training. The law provides direction for confidentiality and none compels a board member to give her constitutional free speech rights. I have not found any evidence that attending controversial racial sensitivity training would improve the board's inaccurate perception of Ms. Story. The state's attorney general have already opted that the policies must align to the state and federal laws. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're going to move on now to reports from the superintendent, Dr. Gordon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Brooks-Buck. At this time, we'll call to the Zoom session, Ms. Antoinette Ward, our Community Engagement Officer, who's going to discuss our good news report. Ms. Ward?
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board, and those who are virtual with us tonight. I'm excited to share the first news report of 2021. All right, Mr. Littlefield, can you move to that next slide for me, please? All right, we'll start tonight by recognizing the HBCU, or Historically Black College and University, band recruitment event, which is usually held at Kings Fork High, but this year the event was virtual. The Kings Fork High band director, Mr. Bernard Bradley, held a 6-week virtual session where collegiate directors were invited to attend. Last year, the HBCU Band Audition Day placed over 50 students into college and university band programs with financial aid. So far, 17 colleges and universities have provided information to Kings Fork band students and those from a variety of states. And this Friday brings the return of the recruitment series since our winter break. This week will feature representatives from Monroe College from New York, St. Augustine University in North Carolina, and of course, right here in Norfolk State University. Next slide, please. John, you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, many of you have seen the announcements last week about our high school online career planner program. So this is a new platform created to make it easy and more convenient for rising 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students to select their subjects for their upcoming school year. So students will have the opportunity to meet with their guidance counselors as they normally would to discuss their career plans, but their selections will be made online. So counselors will still, of course, verify the student selections and ensure that they're appropriate and they're the correct pacing and level before locking in the schedule. That way, the students make their selections through the way that the students make their selections would be through their student hack account, hack meaning their home access center account. The benefits of this new way for allowing the students to select their courses is that parents have a better opportunity to discuss options with the students before the selection is made. The selections can be monitored in real time, and building staff are able to produce the student schedules in a more timely and efficient manner. So that online career planner is now open. It actually opened Monday, January 11th. And so they'll have that opportunity to begin to register for their classes for 2021-22 online. All right, we'll move into our SPS recognition as the Virtual Virginia Canvas Top Performer Award recipient. So in December, SPS was recognized as the top performer among Virginia in the effort of implementing and adopting Canvas. SPS has prioritized adopting and growing and was awarded for our commitment to excellence during these unprecedented times. Being a top performer among the divisions means that Suffolk Public Schools is, oh, you can go back, John. Sorry about that. Being a top performer among the divisions means that Suffolk Public Schools is hitting an 80% adoption rate. So this measurement is based on our division's total number of potential users compared to our number of actual current users. So we as a division currently have 16,183 Canvas users compared to a projected 15,000 estimated amount of users. So this means that our division has adopted a rate of 104%. So definitely something to celebrate. Definitely a round of applause for the hard work that our tech team has done to roll out Canvas, our teachers for being dedicated and committed to learning the platform, and of course to our parents and students for sticking it out with us and adjusting to online learning. Okay, so Governor Northam announced administrative appointments. So with this good news report, we'll take time to recognize our superintendent, Dr. John B. Gordon III. On December 18th, 2020, Governor Ralph Northam announced additional appointments to his administration, and our superintendent was selected as one of approximately 17 superintendents across the country. Next slide, please. So Dr. Gordon will serve the Commonwealth of Virginia and the field of education on the Educational Commission of the States. The commission serves as a partner to state policymakers, and educational leaders collaborate to create effective and educational policies. Nice. Thank you, of course, for representing SPS like you do so well, Dr. Gordon. And now we'll go and discuss our SPS teacher spotlights for the month of December. So we want to take a moment to shout out these teachers for some of the great things that they've done and that they continue to do for Suffolk Public Schools. We'll start with Amy Eccleston from Nansemond River High School for creating an engaging online experience for her French students. She's great at organizing and structuring her Canvas courses to maximize her students' success. We'll recognize Sean Ellis, also from Nansemond River High School, for being a team player who has stepped up to not only teach his math students at Nansemond River, but to also support the geometry students at Colonel Fred Cherry Middle as well. We'll recognize Ms. Lottie Holzendorf from Lakeland High School for going out of her way to create a step-by-step guide for our 9th grade CPR training team and making sure that we have the best high school health and physical education program. We'll recognize Beth Langston from Pioneer Elementary School for creatively engaging her students in learning about local and state history while finding ways to integrate it across the curriculum. Ms. Langston also serves as a grade level chair for 4th grade, and she's a member of the school leadership team. Right, we have Ms. Rachel Lasky from Kingsburg Middle School. Ms. Lasky is actually a new teacher. She's a new science teacher, but she has jumped right in and she has a passion for teaching and creating for her students. And we've heard that her note-taking methods make science come to life. We'll also recognize Ms. Brandy Roberts from Hill Point Elementary School for keeping her kindergartners each and every day engaged in making virtual learning fun for them. She ensures that her lessons are integrated and cross-curricular to benefit the child as a whole. We have Ms. Dawn Roundtree from Nansemond River High School for consistently engaging her CTE, her career and technical education students, and ensuring that they are ready for the real world. And last but not least, we have Ms. Sarah Schweetz from Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School for fostering a love of music and arts in her students. So she uses advanced technological programming for sight reading, for culture awareness, and multicultural music. Ms. Schweetz's students regularly meet with her to have extra singing time, and they perform for one another in their enrichment sessions. So thank you again to all of our staff for your dedication and commitment to building the best SPS. All right, and to end our good news report, we'll just review some of the funds and grants that we've received because money is always good. So next slide, please, John. All right, so SPS Forest Glen Middle School received $116,000 as a part of a $12 million grant from the Virginia Department of Education, which will pay for items such as video monitoring systems, voice and video internal communication systems, school bus interior cameras, mass notification systems, visitor identification systems, two-way radios, etc. So definitely we're looking forward to that assistance there to improve some of the safety features that we have over at Forest Glen Middle School. We also received the National Board Certification Incentive Award for $5,000 for classroom teachers for full certification from the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards. And our award recipients from the division were Allison Ely and Mr. Douglas Rutzen. Next slide, please. All right, and that sums up our good news report for this evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ward, and definitely thank you to Mr. Bradley, the band at Kings Fork High School, those 8 excellent teachers that were part of our December teacher spotlight. We all can see the outstanding work that is going on in Suffolk Public Schools. Continuing with that notion, I'd like to bring forward Mr. Andre Skinner, our coordinator of career and technical education, who's going to give the CTE Advisory Council annual report. Mr. Skinner.
Good evening, all, and thank you all for allowing me to join you tonight. We can go ahead and slide, Mr. Littlefield. I just wanted to start with the advisory council functions, and I just want to hit a couple of the bullets just to make certain that everyone is aware of what our advisory council does. For me, all of these bullets are very, very important, but a couple of the ones that I would love to highlight is their ability to inform the school of the industry needs and inform the industry of services or programs that the school have. Also, a lot of our advisory council function, I rely on them to suggest course content and program assist with program development. And then last but not least, they are there to kind of enhance our classroom tasks and try to provide that link between the school and the industry and the workplace. So in a grand effort, these are persons that have some background in clusters and careers or programs that we have, and they bring all of that information to the table, and we put it on a very large table, and then we just get out and go to work to create an annual CTE division plan with all of their recommendations taken into consideration. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. These are just some of the 1920 council membership participants, and I won't go through and kind of pick out any of them. I just wanted to kind of let you know these were some that were actually in there. Many of them come and they have a variety of backgrounds that lends credence to what we're attempting to do development-wise with programming and why we alter, change, or kind of confront some of the changes inside of our schools to make them represent what we want out in the workforce. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. All right, so we had 2 events last year. The student conference. The student conference is designed for 9th grade students, and it's for them to enhance their knowledge and their expectations in the workforce. And it also provides an opportunity for students to identify a career focus. So we try to cut off about 150 9th grade students. And then this year we did it a little differently. We had a theme of seeing my future, reflecting with the end in mind. So out of the 150 that we allotted for, 143 9th grade students actually attended at the Hilton Garden Inn. One of the big things that we changed this year was we used to have a lot of persons that come out and they did different programs, but this year we decided to kind of pull in the clusters that we actually have in Suffolk Public Schools. And out of those clusters, we brought in health and medical, information technology, and culinary arts. We also added a little flair this year by having a career interest inventory or career interest survey. So we had students kind of rotate through 4 different avenues of career and technical education. They went to the career interest survey to kind of see what they thought they might have been interested in, and then saw what their report actually told them. Hey, you might be good at this, or have you considered this as a career? In doing that, we were able to have a plated lunch, and then at the forefront of our plated lunch was our information technology. We brought in our teachers from CCAP to kind of put on this show. And I'll show you a couple of pictures towards the end, but the actual luncheon, the main event was game design and development. We had a table full of student helpers from the game design and development class out over at CCAP along with its instructor. And she actually took the entire group, and she was the only one that did all this group at one time with laptops and information in a big screen, and guided them through the attempt to code to create a game that we could actually play. So she did an excellent job. It was more interesting than a lot of the adults in the room anticipated. The health and medical section, we teamed up our EMT teacher, Mr. Dowdy, with Paul D. Camp's EMT teacher, along with some of our student assistants. And they came in with their sim man, their mannequin dolls. They performed some trachs, and they did some other things in another room. Last but not least, culinary arts put on a show where we brought in food. We'd have burners. We put kids inside of groups, and they actually started from scratch and made sushi, rolled it up, cut it, designed it, and did a lot of wonderful things. And I did taste test. So all of that came into fruition just from our advisory board, just saying, let's do something different and see how it impacts enrollment over at our CTE Technical Center, which you all know as CCAP. Moving on, Career Expo. We do it every year, and we're going to continue to do it every year. A lot of people say, okay, why do you do Career Expo? Well, Career Expo, it involves our students having an opportunity to do interviews, some of which are mock interviews, some of which are really interviews that turn into opportunities for students outside of the mock setting, because we do get calls back, or sometimes those students do get calls, or they get past cards, business cards from some of the employees. We had 51 representatives, 28 different companies. We lay it out every year just like an honest job fair. 158 seniors came, 491 student interviews were completed. Well, then you might say, well, what do you do with those interviews, Skinner? Well, our teachers get them back, they go through it, and they try to figure out what information the actual representatives said our students needed to improve on as they were asking them questions. So it becomes a teaching tool for the teachers to kind of go back and enhance the workplace readiness skills that I'll show you just a glimpse of later on in our task competency list. But this provides the businesses an opportunity to see our students and kind of see what we're putting out. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. Just a couple of pictures. The main picture is our game design, and it's pretty small, but it says, welcome to Cybersecurity Fundamentals, Game Design and Development. That's our teacher at the front end. This is the show right before she went on. To your left is the health occupations, the EMT, nurse aide kind of combination with students kind of coming through. They got to touch blood. They got to see what it looks like to try to stop the bleeding from a bullet wound, a trach, and all of that good stuff. And on the right, you see more of the same. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. This is one of the plated sushi plates that some of the students get, and these are the students in action. All of the materials, from cooking the chicken, from rolling the sushi, from grabbing the seaweed, and Chef Jones over at CCAP is probably listening to me, and if I'm not calling these things by their correct culinary names, please forgive me, Chef Jones. But all of these individuals, they were able to make their own, roll them up, get it nice and tight with the bamboo strips, cook it, add sauce, and add that flair. And they had a pretty good time. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. So Mr. Littlefield is going to play just a very short clip. In between the cooking session, she carried it as if she was doing like a session. And this is kind of just showing the excitement that was in the room. They were whipping up egg whites for a recipe later, but I just wanted to show you all the smocks, the excitement that our ninth graders had. And I would expect this is going to increase or boost our enrollment over at the culinary program.
Ready, set, go!
So just in that little short clip, them beating the egg whites, then the second thing is almost like the Dairy Queen Blizzard test where they flip it upside down to make sure that the egg whites are tight or they're not falling out like if you were making one of those Dairy Queen Blizzards. So Chef Jones is probably gonna be emailing me tonight, but I just wanted to show a little bit of the excitement when they got to actually touch this information or touch the objects and kind of create things, and then the finishing product was them eating it. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. And this is just another picture of Career Expo. This is the setup. These are some of the businesses. And it's very correlated that Mr. Littlefield, his team is in the bottom right because he did give opportunities this year for our cybersecurity students to perform some internships. They were paid internships. I got it from a grant from Old Dominion University. So some of our top students from our cybersecurity systems operations and cybersecurity software operations course were able to go to our site with Mr. Littlefield and his IT team and perform some of the things that they learned throughout the classroom. And then that's just an assortment of other pictures. We got RAW, which is Mrs. Leitner's mom, Electrical Avenue. So that company kind of came in and they lent credence to a lot of the business reps that we had. So great job for the kids. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. Business participants, this is just a quick list just in case you ever wanted to know who attended, where were some people, who are some backing business participants that we have. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. So I mentioned earlier competency task list, and this is going to be very important from questions that I anticipate getting possibly from our school board or from anyone online with us tonight. This competency task list happens in every single CTE course. The first 22 are always going to be workplace readiness skills that students are carried through by teachers, and this is the way that they're demonstrated. Each one of these task competencies or objectives that we call it in the core areas have a date and a rating that the teachers give for students. Once they've given them activities or they're performed or demonstrated that they've mastered it, they get graded 1 through 5. And then the students will be able to see what I have, what I've mastered, what I need to work on. And it details every single task that the Virginia Board of Education has for every class. Every class has a different competency task list, but all 22 start with the first workplace readiness across the state. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. In saying that, because we didn't get an opportunity to test, we actually wanted to be certain, and this is the first time during my tenure, out of the 214 CTE completers. Now, not just 214 students that took CTE classes last year, so let's not mistake that. There were several students. but completers are students that take sequential courses, a part 1 and a part 2, or several different various courses that connect. So out of those connections, they're saying that 100% of our students master 80% of that task list that I just said. So every task list has a different amount of objectives or skills that each class, each teacher is supposed to make certain that those students master. And 80% is the cutoff for the Virginia Department of Education. And last year alone, and I broke down the groups for the division for Black, Hispanic, Native American, Native Hawaiian, race, economically disadvantaged, and for non-traditional. So all of the 214 female students, 271 male students, for 290 Black students. So all of the students together, nobody failed to reach 80% of those task competencies. You'll see why I'm trying to make this a point later on. Next slide, Mr. Littlefield. Good news report. So this is the part that I absolutely love, and hopefully I'm not boring you all to death, but I want to make certain that I give my shout outs to the CTE teachers. I love all of them. They're doing a great job, but let's shout it out. Deb Shapiro, Forest Glen Middle School. She is the president-elect for the IT Board of Direction, for the IT Board of Directors, I apologize. And the IT board is the International Technology and Engineering Educators Association. This is international. So she will be the president-elect. She will be kind of leading the show for us. So we're glad to have her so she can bring all of that information into Suffolk Public Schools for our tech ed teachers, both in the high school and middle school level. Great job, D. Shapiro. Don Roundtree, Vice President of the Virginia Board of Directors for VTEA. And that's the Virginia's board. Don Roundtree, she's coming back again as the ITIA's Teacher Excellent Award recipient. Great job, Don Roundtree. Then I want to get to Candace Creedle, Nansemond River High School. I'm hopeful that many of you, and I didn't put the link up here because I didn't want to take more time, but Nansemond River High School's DECA Club did an opportunity for, and it was called Gowns for Crowns, where they had an opportunity for persons to bring in old dresses that they had for proms, or gently used, or maybe you used it one time, for those that possibly could not afford, or those that just needed an opportunity or needed a gown. And it turned into a really big thing for the young ladies last year. It was featured on News Channel 3 Taking Action. She won the Taking Action Award. And it was also featured on Channel 13 News. So I just wanted to make certain that we threw that out there. I mentioned CCAP. They also have a Girls Who Codes program out that Mrs. Edwards Brown, who's a game design and development teacher, actually takes through. And I do want to shout out her as well as William Hallwig, Sabrina Hayes from SPS ITRT, Mona Parker, who's the CCAP school counselor, and Luganda Van, who's also a club facilitator. Next slide. Joan Bowden, what we did this year, she came up and said, Skinner, I got an idea. We met a couple of times, pulled in CCAP and said, what can we do to make certain that our middle school students know what Suffolk Public Schools CTE programs have to offer, and more specifically, some of the programs at CCAP. We connected that with our career investigations course, and we brought in roughly 290 students on 2 different days. And they created passports from Fred Cherry Middle School and brought in their students, and they went from class to class. They only could identify a couple of classes. They went in and got the background from some of the courses that they anticipate going into as careers. How much does this make? What do I need? How much schooling do I need? Can I just do it with just a certification? Can I just do it from just a high school diploma? Can I do it with just an apprenticeship? So students came out saying it was very engaging. They enjoyed it, and it's something that we want to continue to do. Virginia Tech came in and said, let's try to throw game design up there. So again, I called on Joan Bowden and Yvette Edwards Brown to do some game design for coding, for video game coding that they were doing out for Virginia Tech program. And then last but not least, I'll stop talking in a moment. I know y'all are like, this guy's not gonna ever quit. Nansemond River High School's updated hospitality and recreation tourism labs. Updated both Nansemond River's cabinet and labs. They had not been updated since 1990 when Mrs. Byron and I first walked into Nassau River High School. So they did get an update this year. Of course, you've already heard about the Barton Ford truck donation to CCAP. We've also acquired new nurse aid furniture. The cosmetology lab is currently being updated at CCAP. And last month during the meeting, you also saw the EMT ambulance simulator. And we're probably the first in this district, I know the district, and possibly in our state, to have the ambulance simulator, which I know is going to take off inside of a classroom so that it is updated and it's a factual, it's an EMT not a fire truck, but an EMT ambulance. So that is going to be something very special that the students will get to train on. Next slide. These are just the dates. So before I open it up to questions, I'm gonna go ahead and question myself so that you all can kind of just listen to what I would be thinking if I were in your shoes. And I'm sitting here like, okay, what could be some questions? So I just want to make certain that everybody knows the State Department has given relief from the CTE credential requirements for students graduating this school year. Of course, they recognize that testing is going to be difficult. They recognize a pandemic is in place, and they recognize several of the classrooms need that hands-on experience that they will not get to fully credential themselves. So that's one of the reasons the state said, you know what, we see there's a problem. The credential requirement has been given the relief and it has been waived for this year. With that being said, we have about 52 high school CTE programs, and that's not taking into account the Part 1 and Part 2 courses. But many of the programs have specific IC tests, different vendors, and all of these tests are not created equal, which presents different problems. So then you might say, okay, well, Skinner, well, what are we going to do for CTE this particular school year? What are we going to do for the students? Are they going to test? It is my opinion, if students don't return physically to school, that most of our programs will forego industry credentialing testing. And you say, wow, well, I gave a couple of concerns, but many have on-screen video recording requirements, additional proctoring fees per student, and then you have the bandwidth and internet concerns that, let alone the most impactful concern that I think the majority of us would have is the hands-on programs attempting to test students that have not acquired that hands-on skill set would limit their effectiveness. And there's no replacement for that hands-on experience. So then you might say, well, what happens to the students in the CTE courses, especially those possibly at CCAP? After having talked with Mrs. Burgess, her group, and talked with some of our staff in an attempt to kind of cut this off at the knees, we know that students would have been introduced to the theory part of their programs, but the answer that I have for you tonight and for our students listening, our teachers are going to continue to teach the skills, whether or not we give an industry credentialing test ever. They need to teach the skills. In saying that, they showcase their talents with their resumes. They showcase their talents from the competency sheets. So students will still be able to leave saying, you know what, I've been introduced to the theory from these competencies that I've mastered from this particular course. And that's why I wanted to kind of bring full circle that competency task list that every student will have in their hands upon leaving or electronically to kind of show once they go into interviewing sessions. These are the skills my class actually prepared me for theory-wise. Now, will you be able to help me with the hands-on portion of it? Also, on top of that, if and when we return to school, we've launched a campaign to kind of pull in the opportunities for students to acquire internships, job shadowing, apprenticeships to assist in gaining some experience along with re-entering the classroom. Spoke with Dr. Gordon and Mrs. Ward, and we put on side of our website just to thank you for all of the business for their participation in the past, but also that we're going to pull on you once it's safe for return at any given time. All is not lost by any means, but when we pull and we're counting on the businesses within the surrounding area to say, you know what, we know what's happening. We see what you need in the schools. This is what we can offer. My advisory council as well, and Dr. Brooks Bucks was present when they came up with the idea that we're going to go through and pull and have round table meetings with businesses, probably 4 to 5 at a time, to kind of showcase what we have and possibly kind of ask them what they can offer. Although it's on the website, although we're putting out advertisement, we want to get them inside of a room and kind of show them what our students have to offer so that when that experience from re-entering the classroom connects with the task list, then they would have had a full year and a full opportunity. With all of that said and done, I'll open up for any questions that may arise from anything that I've shared tonight or anything that I may need to consider.
First of all, thank you so much, Mr. Skinner, for your report. I was there for the Hilton Head Student Expo Student Conference at the Hilton Garden Inn, and you were braver than I am tasting the fish. You see, I did eat the chicken. That contest that they had, I know their risk retired, but the overall excitement that we saw that day was outstanding. I just want to let the board know those students also came professionally dressed as well. And so they were there ready for their interviews. The feedback that the staff was given to the students based on their interviews and the internships, John Littlefield was a part of that. The work that is happening with Ms. Burgess, Mr. Skinner at CCAP, under the leadership of Dr. Lee, it's outstanding. That those 100% that you saw down the board, that really lets you know that our program is successful. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Buck, in case the board has any questions.
That is what I was going to ask. Are board members who have questions of Mr. Skinner that he did not answer? Okay. No. Mr. Skinner, if you would like to make a comment.
I do, and this was not on the agenda, Dr. Gordon, but I just want to say this because it's heavy on me for some reason tonight.
We'll give you 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. So before Twitter and Facebook following and all of that good stuff on Instagram, it's connecting to CTE department. I do want to say something to Mrs. Mayo and Mrs. Byram. The two of you, and I know I should not be singling out anybody, but the two of you had a hand in guiding me from elementary school all the way up to high school, and you consistently both always talk about how proud you all are of me. So I wanted to make certain that you really understood that you two are a part of the CTE program. From watching you play the piano and sing and calm my class in elementary school, I knew you as Miss Williams turned Mrs. Mayo. And then Miss Byram came several times to Nansemond Rivers football field to watch me play the trumpet, had plenty of solos, and then she'd get in class and brag on me in U.S. history and government class. So because of your positive encouragement, I just wanted to make certain that you all know that you had a hand in this. You don't hear it all the time, and I'm actually ashamed that I've not said this publicly, but I wanted to take this opportunity. Your hand is heavily invested in the CTE program as a result of the work that you put in for me. Thank you all for being positive to me and to the entire board. Thank you all for believing in me, and as a result, thanks. And CTE hopefully will continue this gradual incline towards the success of the rest of our students in Suffolk Public Schools.
We have no doubt that you will. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Gordon?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. We'll transition into the calendar of special events, and I promised her I would do this. So happy 12th birthday to my daughter, Simone, today. She's actually tuning in to watch it. Happy birthday, Moni Love. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is on Monday, the 18th. Suffolk Public Schools will be closed for all of our fans and constituents that are watching. Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week is the 24th through the 30th of this month. 7th grade SOL testing. We know that a lot of our parents have received, all of our 7th grade parents have received that information. We'll have testing that will start on the 26th to 28th. As we also know, as one of our speakers said tonight, our vaccine rollout will also begin on January 25th and 26th. Strongly recommending that our staff gets the vaccine. National School Counseling Week is February 1st through the 5th. All of the hard work of our school counselors, we've added additional things to their plate this year, also with social emotional learning. Our next school board meeting is February 11th. And I would also like to add to the agenda that we have VSBA Clerk Appreciation Week, February 15th and 19th through the 19th, recognizing Ms. Gardner and Ms. Hicks for all of their outstanding work. And next month is School Board Appreciation Month. Definitely want to thank the board for all of your leadership during these challenging times. That's the conclusion of our calendar of special events, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we have the consent agenda, and this is an action item. There's an action item, approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. It's been approved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chair Byram, Ms. Byram,
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We have some unfinished business, and that unfinished business includes 4 ordinances. These are action items because this is the second reading for all of them. I'll begin with the first. These are all second readings. The first is ordinance 2021-7, amending Chapter 9, Article 6, entitled Management of Aggressive and Violent Behaviors, to read restraint and seclusion, and deleting language found in the following subsections 9-26-3 through 9-26.9, and adding new subsections 9 through 26-10 and 9 through 26-11 of the policies of the Suffolk City School Board. This is a second reading. This is an action item.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Recognize Ms. Byram.
I would like to move that we approve ordinance 20/21-7 about the management of aggressive and violent behaviors, to read restraint and seclusion and delete certain languages found in subsections.
Is there
I
a
second the motion.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this policy.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chair Byram,
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. The next one is ordinance 20/21-8, amending Chapter 10, Article 5, Section 10-5-1, entitled Public Appearance Before the School Board, Time Limits for Public Comments, Public Participation at the Special or Call Meetings of the Policies of Suffolk Public Schools. This is the second reading as well. May I have a motion? This is an action item.
I make a motion, Madam Chair, that we approve ordinance 20/21-8 concerning public appearances.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
No.
Vice Chair Byram,
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Number 3, ordinance 20/21-9, amending Chapter 2, Article 3, Section 2-3.2, entitled Regular Meetings, Special Meetings, Quorum of the Policies of the Suffolk Public School Board. This is a second reading. I need a motion. This is an action item.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt ordinance 20/21-9 concerning meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Madam
Clerk.
Chair,
Yes,
um,
yes, Mr. Mitt.
just
Is there
one
a-
item of a discussion about this.
Yes,
I, um, I'm opposed to the corrections that were made. I believe it makes it too strict for a special meeting to happen, having to have 3 members request the meeting instead of 2, and then requiring the chair's permission. So I just wanted to add that I'm against this ordinance.
okay, thank you. Your objection is heard. Is there another board member who would like to address this issue? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you go on with the roll
Board
call?
members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
No.
Board Member Riddick?
No.
Board Member Story?
No.
Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Number 4, ordinance 20/21-10, amending chapter 2, article 8, section 2-8.1, entitled Early Appearances Defined. 5 minutes and not less than 3 minutes for a presentation when more than 15 speakers of the policies of the Suffolk Public School Board. This is the second reading. May we have a motion? This is an action item.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve ordinance 20/21-10 concerning early appearances and 5 minutes and not less than 3 minutes for presentations.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Madam Clerk?
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
No.
Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, board members. We are at new business. The first item under new business is the school calendar. We have one correction under that. And if you would address that correction, I think Mrs. Gardner, there was one correction, I think under 2, there were 2 choices, 1 and 2.
It's under option 2 for the SPS draft calendar. For the date March 8th, it reads Professional Learning Day, no school for students. At first, it was an asynchronous day, but it's a no school day for students.
It should be no school day for students.
Right.
So
And
if you would make,
ESB.
okay. And this is an action item. So I wanted to make that correction so that you would know in your choices. If you were interested in making that choice, as Dr. Branch discusses that. If we have questions, is that correct, Dr. Gordon? Dr. Branch is going to address this. Dr.
Yes,
Branch.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Gordon.
Yes, ma'am. We will turn it over to Dr. Branch for the presentation so she can review the options for the board for the 2021-2022 school calendar. Dr. Branch?
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, school board members, and Suffolk Public Schools staff and family and friends. I facilitated the 2021-2022 calendar committee as I led 33 appointed and requested members from all stakeholder groups, teachers, parents, administrators, SAO administrators, as well as other departments and other auxiliary groups. During the process of our work, those 33 members were explained the guidelines in which I will go over during this presentation and the charge that we were given to create options of a calendar for 2021-2022. John, please go on to the second slide. As I mentioned, there was a fair and extensive group of stakeholders, parents, grandparents, guardians, teachers, school administrators, school administrative office representatives, as well as those from our transportation department, food services, as well as other community groups. We began the work in October. There were 3 meetings held virtually with the calendar committee. We were broken up into 4 groups amongst those 33 members. And in those groups, they were given the charge to work on calendar options based on historical data, as well as the guiding principles and what our teachers and staff and students would prefer in a school year. The options you will see are actually not very different from what we have currently in this school year or in our previous 3 school years. Some of the guiding principles, which you are very likely familiar with, are 10 days of pre-service for new teachers, as well as 7 days of pre-service for returning teachers. The first day of school, the school board agreed, must be the Tuesday after Labor Day. There must be, and this is a Virginia Department of Education requirement, that we must have at least 180 instructional days. Election Day in November should either be used as a staff development, clerical day, or a combination of both. Next slide. Another guiding principle is that when Easter occurs prior to October 15th, spring break is scheduled the week following Easter. And when Easter is after April 15th, spring break should be scheduled the week preceding Easter. And this is not only for Suffolk Public Schools, this is part of the regional agreement for school divisions. Easter in 2022 is April 17th. Therefore, spring break will be April 11th through April 15th, 2022. Next slide. And some of our final guiding principles: up to 10 days missed of school will be made up by the additional instructional hours built into the school calendar. On the documents you will see that I've included the total amount of hours beyond the 990 required hours. If additional days are missed beyond those 10 days, the school board will determine what the makeup schedule will be. Next slide. Now, in the documents, and you can proceed, Mr. Littlefield. In the documents you have received, there is the 2021-2022 calendar overview. I want to highlight that there are 2 options that the calendar committee has submitted for recommendation, with the recommendation being option 1, and that was agreed upon by the committee during our final meeting. There are very little difference between the 2 calendars, but I do want to highlight that we have added 2 asynchronous learning days to both options in the calendar, one being October 22nd and the second being March 8th. On these days, students will work virtually on pre-planned assignments, projects, and the like that the teachers have given to the students, and teachers will have clerical and professional development on those days. So the students are still working and the teachers are still working. A difference between option 1 and option 2 as far as the end of the semester: January 31st in option 1 is a half day. That is a Monday. And the school board, you all approved the elimination of midterm and final exams. Therefore, those days that would typically be half days are no longer needed, and in the recommended calendars have been put forth as full days. And so the half day would allow for clerical work at the end of the semester. Option 2 for that same time frame does allow for half days on January 28th and 31st. Another option here in the calendar, one difference is the end of school. Option 1 has the end of school as June 20th. The committee agreed that they wanted teachers to have the additional day to close out the school year. So the last day of school would be the 17th of June, and the last day for teachers and staff would be June 20th. In option 2, June 17th is the last day for both students as well as teachers and staff. As required, we do have over 180 instructional days. Option 1, you actually have at the high school, because the hours are calculated different at the high school than they are at the elementary school. At the high school, we have 1,086.66, and elementary school 1,057.83, which gives us 11 bank days. And those would normally be used for inclement weather days. With the advent and usage of virtual learning, we may be able to decrease the need for inclement weather days as long as there is power service and there are no safety issues. Students and teachers can continue the instructional and learning process. Another document you have is the monthly overview, where I include all of the highlights of each month. If there's any clerical days, parent-teacher conferences, any of the asynchronous or virtual learning days, all of that is included for you. And that is based on options 1 and option 2. And you'll see that they are very similar. The final document is the SPS draft of calendar options 1 and calendar options 2. The calendar committee has recommended option 1 to the school board and Dr. Gordon. Dr. Gordon has agreed with the recommendation of option 1. I pose to you, the school board, to base your recommendation on the information. And if you have any questions, I can entertain that now.
Board members, are there questions regarding the 2 options? Do any board members have questions? The chair recognizes board member Story.
I'm just wondering if you entertained the governor's suggestion out there for year-round school. Did you talk about that?
That was not brought up during our time. Our last meeting was December 8th. And so the governor recently shared that information. However, in planning for year-round schools, it has come up from our teachers because that word is out there. It usually takes 6 to 8 months to plan. And so that is not the consideration at this time for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you. Are there other questions from other board members regarding these 2 options? Thank you. Do we have a recommendation?
Madam,
do we have a motion from the board? I believe this is indeed an action item. Do we have a recommendation or a motion? I'm sorry.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Barrow.
I would like to move that we adopt option 1 for the calendar.
All right. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I second the motion.
We have a motion to accept option 1 and a second. Mrs. Gardner?
Board members, please vote. Board member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board member Mayo?
Yes.
Board member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board member Riddick?
Yes.
Board member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now have information. This is an information item about the support scale review.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to introduce Ms. Wendy Forsman, our Chief Financial Officer, to give an overview of our support scale review. If the board recollects, this was also a discussion item that we had from the budget presentation last year, when we knew that really revising and fixing our support scale was going to be a big rock item for this year. At this point in time, I will turn it over to Ms. Forsman. Ms. Forsman?
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, school board members. This evening, we're going to talk a little bit about where this came from. Of course, as Dr. Gordon has said, John, if you'll go to the next slide. It started last year. It was something that under consideration that we knew that we needed to work on. So at the time in February, Superintendent's proposed budget, we talked about a review and change to our support scales, where we reviewed all the positions and grades and adjusted them to more competitive Region 2 rates, and to change it to years of experience so it'd be less confusing for the staff, because the other scales are based on years of experience. John, if you go forward. So the current support scales have many challenges, and we've talked about these at different times over the last several years. One is the compression on the scale, because the scale itself does not lend, the money on the scale does not lend us to step people every year, because it's so much money between steps. Oftentimes we can't afford a 2.5% raise plus. So we keep people on the same step. And then when new folks come on, they're put on nearly the same step. And so people who have very large differences in their years of experience are near the same step or on the same step. It's not based on years of experience. It's not competitive. There are inconsistencies with titles and number of grades between levels of positions. And the number of steps on the scale is just not adequate to convert it to years of experience. There's only 18 steps on the scale total. So those are all challenges we faced with the particular scales that we're with. So we developed some goals for this project, and they are pretty much as follows: that we want to develop experience-based scales with at least 30 steps that are competitive. We want to review and update all the job descriptions, make sure everything's accurate. We want to evaluate and regrade the positions into paid bands based upon actual duties and responsibilities. We want to keep in mind the increase in minimum wage that I'll talk about in a few minutes that happens in 2026. And we want to meet with representative groups of employees for input. Next slide, John. So the end result is that we expect to have 4 pay scales at the end. All the scales will be based on years of experience and will be checked with competitiveness with Region 2. And again, we've talked about this before, but I want to make sure the board understands you can make it competitive with Region 2 year 1, but if you don't keep it up, you will then become out of competitiveness, if you will, with the other regions. So you have to keep this up on an annual basis. But we'll end up with a teacher scale, a bus driver scale, a support scale, and an administrative scale. John, if you go to the next one. Of course, another challenge that we've talked about before is this minimum wage increase. And the General Assembly has passed a plan to increase the minimum wage in Virginia to $15 an hour by January 1, 2026. And here's how they plan to do it: $9.50 an hour by May 1st, $11 by January 1st, 22, then $12 in 23, $13.50 in 25, and $15 an hour in 26. This is a very aggressive timeline, and as you can see, we certainly cannot do that very quickly. We can't give raises like that in a like manner, so we have to make a plan. So if you look at where we are today, you can see that our lowest hourly rate is $7.93 an hour for a substitute bus aide. That's roughly half of where it needs to be by 2026. And those grades that are below $15 an hour on their first step are grades 7 through 18. We don't even use grades 0 through 6 because they're below the current minimum wage. That's how outdated these scales are. So you can see that's a lot of grades and a lot of people that are below that $15 an hour. So to date, the work that we've completed so far, and I have to give kudos to the HR department. We've been working in collaboration with them. I've got several folks on my floor who've worked tirelessly to help us dig through those pay scales of other divisions and look at how they're set up and check evaluation forms and everything. Just a lot of work has gone into this for the staff. But what we've done is we've completed a draft support pay scale. We've developed it at least the way it should work. We have job description evaluation form, a form developed that we can use to evaluate each and every job description. And then Human Resources has worked on verifying years of experience on all phase 1 employees. And I'll tell you who those are in just a moment, but that verification literally went person by person, every single file, looking at their years of experience that they were given when they came in, how many years they've been with Suffolk Public Schools, what were they given for years of experience, where would they sit on a scale based on years of experience. So it's quite a bit of work on their part. John, if you'll change, thank you. So the new pay scale draft, which again, we won't show this scale because there's a lot of unknowns out there at this moment. We don't know if the General Assembly will change things. We don't know how much money we're going to end up getting from the city. We don't know how aggressive we can be in getting to that $15 an hour by 2026. So we had to do a scale based on concepts. So the concept of the scale is going 0 to 35 years of experience. And that follows the hybrid model, the hybrid retirement model. If you remember, hybrid retirees have to work a combination of 90, age and years of service of 90 in order to get full retirement, which means they're going to work longer than 30 years, most of them. And so we wanted to make sure that we recognize that because we already have over 700 hybrid retirement employees in the system at this time. We want to change from the currently used grades, which are kind of narrow, to wider pay bands, because you can put more positions in the same range in a pay band, and it just reduces the number of grades so that we have more concise pay scales. It's not so many different pay scales for so many different things that no one knows why someone's on grade 10 versus grade 11 or grade 12. So pay bands are broader and they allow us to put positions together, like positions together. So then we get, we put a 5% differential increase between bands. So if you have pay band 1 and pay band 2, there's a 5% differential increase between those. That is just like our current scales. It's very, very common. We've looked at all the other school divisions around us. They all have about a 5% differential between their pay bands or grades. Steps for experience, though, as you move from 0 up to 35, each year it's a 0.5% increase as a recognition for experience on the scale. Now that seems low, I know, but you have to realize we have to get on this scale first and get all these folks on this scale, and it takes a lot of money to do that. It also, this scale, if we do this, will allow us to use a cost of living adjustment annually. So everyone would get their small step of 0.5%, but then you can use your cost of living adjustment to adjust the entire scale so we can remain competitive with the region around us and competitive with other school divisions. So it's a good way of doing both things that we need to do in a way that we can actually afford in the future. All right, John. The job description evaluation form was developed and it has several sections to it. The first section is based on responsibilities. And so points are given for responsibilities for equipment, materials, processing, data entry, for safety of others, and for the work of others, whether you evaluate, hire, fire, or assign work. And so points are given if it's low, moderate, more than moderate, I can't remember the name of them, sorry, and then it's something that you do all the time. And so each of these is given a point and points, and as you go down this, each area is given a number of points. So then we looked at skills, and so education level required by the job description. That's very important. If the job description requires you to have a bachelor's degree, then you're given points for that. If it does not require it, then you are given points for not having one. So if you have a job that does not require a high school diploma, that gets one set of points. If you have one that requires a high school diploma, that gets another set of points. And as you move up with education, the points are given based on that. And then skills or knowledge required. So what kind of skills? Do you have basic skills? Do you have skills that needed specific training? And then at the high end of the points, did you have to get a national or state certification or license in order to do that job? Go ahead, John. Then we went to working conditions. We felt it was important to recognize those folks who have to work outside all the time in extreme heat or cold, and those that work inside or work some combination thereof. And so points are given for those people that have to work outside all the time, those people that have to work outside most of the time, some of the time, and then those people that are inside. So you get various points based on what you are doing and whether you're extreme heat or cold, in extreme heat or cold. Moving heavy objects was another one that was very important to the group as we talked about this, because there are those positions that require people to move 50 pounds or greater constantly or frequently. And those are on the job description. So it makes it very clear and easy for you to be objective when you're giving the points. And then mental efforts. What kind of independent work decisions are you required to make? Are you required to make policy decisions, or is your work given to you on a list and you do that every day? So it gives you an idea of how much independent decision making that individual employee has to do in their job. John, if you'll move to the next one. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to phase this in. The overall cost of this is going to be about right at $10 million over the course of the 3 years because it builds upon itself. The phase one group that the Human Resources has already worked on, they looked at the current hire date, their original hire date, because sometimes those are different. They looked at their VRS membership date to see if they might have had membership elsewhere. So maybe they came from another school division here. And they looked at all three of those and again, looked at each individual file to determine the years of experience. So each employee was researched individually to determine their experience in their current position and given years of experience. John, if we go to the next one. So our next step. Actually, we finished this today. We reviewed and updated the job descriptions for phase one. The next step will be completing the job description evaluation for the groups. We're going to meet with employee representatives of each group in phase one. That group is going to evaluate their job with this evaluation tool and their job description. The employee of the supervisor of that employee group is also going to do that same evaluation of that position. And then Human Resources is going to do the same thing. They're going to evaluate the job based on the job description from a human resources standpoint. And then we plan to get an unbiased group. An unbiased group is someone who doesn't know anybody that's one of these positions, isn't involved with the school division maybe, someone who's outside to take the job description and the evaluation tool and give us an unbiased opinion if at all possible. John? So we have to do a phased in approach. You can see here the grades that are affected based on the minimum wage compliance. So grades 7 through 13, really 12, but 13 has one person on it. So there'll be fiscal 2021, 2022. Grades 14 through 21 would be fiscal 22, 23. Grades 22 through 28 or 29, and there's a little bit of difference there. I'll tell you in just a minute how that works, would be fiscal 23, 24. And then we would create administrative scales after that for anyone who is on the administrative level. So that would include your foremans and supervisors and managers and those kinds of folks. Anybody above that grade 29. John, if we go to the next one. So you can see here that to meet the $11 per hour, we really have to start with these grades 7 through 12 at least, because they're all below $11 an hour right now. So this would be our phase one folks. This would be your bus aides, your cafeteria associates, not the managers, just the associates, the safety and ISS monitors, the school crossing guards, your full-time custodians, your maintenance helpers, your delivery drivers, your trades workers, not a journeyman or a master, which are a little bit higher trades workers, but those that are at the very bottom, the very beginning, that are just trades workers. And then your dispatchers and file and textbooks clerks. John, if we'll move to the next one. So our next step is to rank the phase one jobs based on the accumulated points. We're going to meet with all these groups. We're going to get all these evaluations done. We're going to get that all back in. We're going to then accumulate all the points. We're going to look at where they sit. So we'll take all of these jobs and we'll put them based on the points and see where they fall based on pay grade 1, 2, or 3, whatever we decide to name them. And then we're going to compare that to what other Region 2 districts are paying. Now, we're not going to do a market survey. I don't want to make that very clear. A market survey will do us no good at this point because every district out there is in the exact same boat we're in. None of them have a $15 an hour minimum wage. None of them are even close. So what we want to look at is if we look at all those jobs in phase one and we, based on points, decide that job A should be paid more than job B, we want to see if that's in line with what other districts are doing around us. We want to make sure that we're not misaligning ourselves with what other districts are doing. So we're going to look at that kind of as our guide to what we're going to do and how we're going to place people. So then we're going to place each position on a pay band. and each person on that pay band based on their years of experience. All right, I think that's it. So I will entertain some questions. I will tell you that this PowerPoint, the chart with the effective dates and the positions, and the evaluation tool will all be on the website for our staff to look at.
Board members, are there any questions? Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Forsman. This is an information item, so no action is necessary. Next item on the agenda is the, I believe the the health matrix, the health dashboard. Dr. Gordon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Brooks-Buck. As it's become customary since we've been doing this since July, Dr. Rice, our Chief of Administrative Services, is going to provide SBS Health Dashboard updates. You may also say a few things about our vaccination process from the information that we shared today. And then as usual, we will open this up for questions from the board. We have listed this and we will continue to list this as an info/action item, giving the board the flexibility if at any point in time they would like to determine any potential return to school dates in the hybrid model for our students. So with that being said, I'll turn over to Dr. Rice. Dr. Rice?
Thank you, Dr. Gordon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and board members. First of all, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And John, next slide, please. So as you can see here, to no one's surprise, probably you're seeing a lot of red. We're continuing to monitor the Eastern region, which you see across the top there. And they've had an increase over the week of January 4th to the 11th. And at the bottom there, you see the city of Suffolk. And we've held pretty steady as far as the cases per 100,000 at 54. But where we made the big leap is in the percent positivity rate. We went from 15.4, as you can see, to 24.5, so nearly a 10% increase there. And just a reminder that on the left there, those color bands, the bands to the left of the Eastern region chart are representative of the numerical ranges for the cases per 100,000. And I'm going to show you something in a minute, and we will come back to this slide, but I want you to notice that the orange band, which is considered high, the red is very high, orange is high, yellow is moderate, light green is low, and dark green is very low. But the orange band for cases there, when they made the change, they made that a very large range. So it is now between 3.57 and 14.3. So we're going to make a recommendation to you in a next slide or two. John? Next slide. Thank you. All right, so here what you're looking at is the proposed learning models that we've had in place. So just as a reminder with the visual, we're going to remain virtual as long as we stay in the orange or red bands or high, very high. We'd like to move into hybrid at some point when we get in numbers into yellow and light green, and then hopefully full face-to-face normal scheduling when we get into the dark green. The proposal we'd like to make is on the next slide. We're recommending that we look in the orange band and break that up a little bit. And we have also had this discussion with the local health department, and they are in certain agreement because this would put us more in line with where we were looking at the 3 color bands. So now what we'd like to do is look at the high cases being 8.93 and above. And moving over to the hybrid, our cases would be anywhere between 0.36 to 8.93. And that would be the changes that we're recommending. So if you go back, John, one slide, you can see the difference of how we're recommending that change. So you can see we've moved it from the high from 3.57 up to the 8. And that's really all I have. If you have any questions about that, I do want to say that, as mentioned earlier, we worked with the health department to roll out the vaccine, and that memo did indeed go out to all employees today. And as of late this afternoon, we have about 800 people that have registered for that vaccination. So that's really good.
Dr. Rice?
Yes, sir.
After the governor's news conference today and the memo that was put out by the health department and the Department of Education. How will that affect getting our kids back into school?
I'm not sure what part you're actually talking about. The new guidelines?
The new guidelines and then the push to get our kids back into school, following more of what the CDC said in reference to the matrix.
Yeah, well, we're actually already doing that, Mr. Mitnick, and that's where we adopted those 5 color bands, and that's when the Virginia Department of Virginia Department of Health also adopted those 5 color bands. And a lot of what the guidance indicates is that we still need to have that conversation with the local health board so that we can determine what is the rate of transmission in the community.
Yes, and I can also add to that, Mr. Minnick.
Dr. Gordon.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Gordon, one of the things that we'd like to do, and thank you, Dr. Rice, for addressing that. It is up to the local community and looking at the local community, Mr. Mitnick. Because the CDC is recommending for the country, and the country keeps going back to the local community to make the decision about the local community, since we're all in different places all over the country. So it's going to be a decision that the local community makes about the local community. Go ahead, Dr. Gordon.
No, thank you, Dr. Brooks-Buck. 2 main new things, Mr. Mitnick, that Dr. Rice and I have been talking about. That information was actually shared with superintendents a while ago, but it was embargoed. One of the new things that you really have to take a look at is they're asking you to take a look at your outside community, and the total number of hospital beds are available has now become a factor. The other thing that they want to make sure that school divisions think about is the availability of your staff. You're really supposed to take a pulse to see if you have the staff to open properly. Now, one of the things that I think Dr. Brooks-Buck was alluding to there is you heard in the governor's press release today and at the press conference that schools are not found to be a solid transmitter of the disease. But what was not discussed is that is because the majority of school divisions are either hybrid at best or are out of school. So your rates in the community are actually higher than the rates that there are in schools because people are still out in the community. So this is something that we actually have on our agenda to take a look to make sure that we are still in line with everything that needs to go on. I am very confident that the health plan that we submitted to the board in August literally checks every box that's actually in the new guidance. They just want to make sure, as you've heard Dr. Rice explain month after month, they're now pushing school divisions to also take a look at more than just the total number of cases per 100,000 and more than just a % positivity rate. So that's where the availability of hospital beds, the availability of staff really comes into play. So we really feel that we're very confident we're prepared for whenever that date may be. The guidance that was shared today is something that Dr. Rice and I have secretly been talking about for about a week. But we know that we have to take a look at all factors, and those mitigation strategies, those were also the things that came out in the guidance today, that everything that we've already shared. And I just want to state it real quick for the public. The 6 feet social distancing, reducing the class size, reducing the total number of students that are on bus, the mandatory wearing of masks. These are all the things that we already had in our health plan. A lot of that was reiterated today in the guidance that was released, and they're actually calling it interim guidance this afternoon. So thank you so much for that question, Mr. Minnick.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Our next report on the agenda has to do with athletics.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Buck, again. And we were very strategic in placing these reports in order because we wanted to make sure that Dr. Rice could provide our school community with an update, as we do monthly, for the SPS Health Dashboard, to transition to make sure that everyone was aware of the plan that we had put in place for our participation in the Virginia High School League athletics. So I will turn it over to Dr. Lee at this time, our Director of Secondary Leadership. Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Gordon. My job is to give you an update of Suffolk Public Schools athletics and COVID-19. John, if you'll go to the next slide. Where are we now? Well, we want to start at the beginning we were in phase one in August of this year. We had virtual workouts, which may seem a little strange to those who are in know with athletics, but students work out with their coaches via the internet. They were not allowed to come on school grounds, and everything had to be virtual. So it was basically conditioning and getting to know your teammates through the internet. On October the 5th, we moved to phase two in-person workouts, in which students could come on the campus, but they were limited and there was no contact, but they were limited in the activities that they could use. They had to work in groups of 10 or less. And they could not use a ball, and they could not run plays and things of that nature. So it was very limited. In December 7th, we moved into phase three. The BHSL shared with all schools that they could return to practice at this time. All three high schools did so. But prior to us getting out for winter break, those activities were halted. And we decided to go back basically to no physical activity. What you see on this slide was a little outdated, but we shared with the schools that we would continue to review the status of winter athletics based on the metrics that Dr. Rice talked about. Now, obviously, you've heard at this time too that we have now decided to cancel winter sports, which is the first season for us. I think no one wanted athletics to continue more than Dr. Gordon and myself, who are former high school principals and coaches, but obviously the safety of our students were primary, and we decided it was best, along with our neighbors, several of our neighbors, to halt BHSL athletics for winter sport. Next, we'll go into some of the safety protocols, because we are coming into the second season. Or season two of athletics. So John, if you would advance the slide. So some of the protocols that we would have put in place and that we will put in place if we are allowed to continue for our second season are that students and coaches had to complete a safety monitoring form before every practice and every game. We disinfected all equipment before, during, and after activities. We did not get to the point where students were riding activity buses, but in the future, if we are allowed to continue, students will be socially distanced on the buses. They must wear masks at all times. There would be no sharing of electronics, no eating and drinking on the buses. And when we do get to that stage, students are not allowed. I'm sure you've seen the NCAA or professional basketball games where the kids are not sitting close together on the bench. They would be spread out. So we would be using some of these safety protocols when the students do come back. Next slide, please. So again, every effort is going to be made if we are allowed to continue with use of locker rooms to minimize exposure by separating students into smaller groups when they are allowed to go into the locker room. Again, we will social distance at all times. Coaches would be present at every practice and activity, and kids would be monitored at all times. We would also have designated isolation rooms during games in case a student were to get sick. Let's say he passed the COVID screening but got sick during a game. All schools would have an isolation room. That student would not be allowed to ride back on the bus and would have to be picked up by a parent. Also, we would have administrators that would attend all games who would then stay with that student until that student was picked up. Game day forms, for example, we were not going to allow parents or spectators, based on the governor's and VHSL recommendation, to attend games because we were limited to 25 spectators or less. But there would be a form sent to each school letting the schools know who would be allowed to come into the facility. Also, we would have procedures for picking up students after games. And the middle school principals, along with Dr. Gordon and myself, decided that unless students were back 100% of the time at school, middle school athletics would not continue. This would be a transportation issue, nothing else. It would be very difficult to provide transportation for students if everybody's not in school at the same time. So we decided that that would be the best cause of action. And until the kids come back 100% of the time, middle school athletics would not continue. Next slide, John. Just trying to find that. So one of the things that the VHSL came up with was the sports calendar, the championship +1. I'm not going to read over the whole thing, but we keep talking about season 1, season 2, season 3. I know a lot of you are used to fall sports starting first, but season 1 actually starts with winter sports, and that would have been basketball, indoor track, swimming, wrestling, and sideline cheer. This season, the slide you're looking at now is the season we just canceled. So this would have been basketball, track, again, and sideline cheer and wrestling. Band, if you notice at the bottom, is a non-VHSL sport. It is not sanctioned under the VHSL. We have had talks with the band directors, and they have decided to wait until the spring season to have some form of competition, because we certainly did not want to leave our tremendously talented band students out. John, next slide, please. The next season is season 2, or traditionally our fall sports. This is the season that is coming up next. It includes competition cheer, cross country, field hockey, football, golf, and volleyball. What you see in red on all these slides are our regional dates. This is kind of, they're in red because that's really important. For our students to be able to advance to state level competition, we would have to be finished all of our regular season competitions by these dates, so that our kids could qualify for state playoff events. And if, John, if you'll advance the next slide, we'll show our season 3. And season 3 is baseball, soccer, softball, tennis, and outdoor track. What you see on all of these slides is the first date that students can practice that is set by the VHSL. The first contest means the first game. Regional dates, of course, are our local regional playoff date, and state semifinals are the state championship and state championship game. As of this date, we have several of our neighbors that have canceled winter sports as well. It would have limited us in our ability to be able to play. However, the state championships at this point looks like will still continue, but a lot of our, again, a lot of our neighbors will not be participating in the winter sports, VHSL winter sport. Next slide, please. And we do not want to forget our academic activities. I will have some conversations with Dr. Gordon. We do have theater, scholastic bowl, forensics, debate, robotics, multimedia contests. All of these are VHSL state, VHSL sponsored events. Now, we may be able to continue with some of these activities because the VHSL will make some of these virtual. So these are conversations that I will have with Dr. Gordon and the schools to find out if we would be desirous of continuing to compete in these academic activities if they were virtual. And we are finding that they are trying to convert most of these to virtual activities. Next slide. So one of the things that we looked at was the high school network and putting cameras in our gymnasiums and on our athletic fields. The National High School Federation has a streaming service that we have acquired, and this will help us in the sense that we're not allowed to have spectators, but parents certainly are going to be able to watch these events via streaming method. Now, why did we choose Pixelot, which is the maker of the cameras and the interface network? Number one, because the installation and equipment were free. So that was a no-brainer. And a lot of this was prompted by the fact that the VHSL and the government limited our ability to have fans. We did purchase bridges to bypass the school internet service. Why is that important? We did not want to violate any grants that we had that gave us access to the internet. So it would not be able to be hacked. It will be a system on its own. And how much does it cost? $9.99 a month and annual pass of $69 a month. For every annual pass that a parent buys, the schools get $20. For every monthly pass, the schools get $1. I can tell you personally, because my students, my kids are in North Carolina, I get a chance to watch them on TV because I can't go to the games. And also I get to watch my nieces and nephew in Texas. Once you buy this pass, you can watch any game in the United States that's on the National High School Federation. We had one high school that played a couple of nights ago, and I guess people want to watch sports that bad. They had 11,000 viewers for one high school game. So we're seeing that people are using this so that they can actually watch athletics. Schools will get to keep 100% of advertisement for their schools. And the cameras, again, are in, Dr. Gordon. They came in today. The last ones came in today. And we are set for installation next week. And we will finish that process up, hopefully, within the next 2 weeks in time for our next season of sports. And what you see at the bottom is a couple of our neighbors who are also getting the Pixelot system. Mr. Littlefield, and I want you to be really familiar, so I have a short video that will explain what Pixelot and an NFHS network is.
My name is Ty Phillips. I'm the boys varsity head basketball coach and assistant athletic director at Roswell High School in Roswell, Georgia. The Pixelot system was a no-brainer for us at Roswell High School once we saw how easy it was. We have one in our stadium, we have one in our gym. We're able to stream football, basketball, volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, wrestling, as well as non-athletic events from our VIP night to open house to pep rallies. We're able to stream it for all levels, varsity, JV, and freshmen. In the first 3 months, we probably streamed 75 games, and we will stream over 200 games by the end of the school year. We really love this technology. It's one of the few things in our athletic department that we don't have to worry about. Once the units were installed, we don't have to do anything. We simply send our schedules in, the units turn on and off all by themselves, and the NFHS network provides all technical support. We feel like we're part of a growing sports network. More schools that we play are getting the Pixelot system installed, including some of our rivals. So it's great for our fans and even our families that don't live in the Roswell area. They can see our games home and away live streamed. Our coaches really love the usefulness of the Pixelot systems for their programs. We now have video for every game without somebody having to be filming in person. Our sports like volleyball and basketball play so many games, it's often a challenge to have somebody to film. We really enjoy all of our levels, freshman, JV, varsity, having film available, whereas freshmen and JV in the past may not have had film available to them. For basketball, we get the full-length game deposited directly to our coaching software without having to do anything. Another thing we love about the Pixelot system, we can log in, schedule a practice, a tryout, a workout, make it private so that it's only accessible to me and my staff, and then we can look at it on any device we choose immediately afterwards. In our experience, the Pixelot system has become an indispensable part of the development of our program and being competitive at the top classification in the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Littlefield. One of the things I will finally say too about this system is its non-athletic uses. I know prior to Dr. Gordon coming, we used to have convocation at Kings Fork, which was at the high school. And all of those things can now be video streamed free. So we would not have to pay for it if you had a graduation. Whatever ceremonies you have would all be free through this system for us. Again, it did not cost us a dime, and we get to share in the revenue, but I think it has many other uses, particularly in this COVID area, since our students are not actually able to play. In the future, they would be able to get really good video for colleges, and we could send that off, which I know was a concern for at least one of our board members, to make sure that our kids are getting that exposure that they so richly deserve. Remember, this is band too, so when the band is playing for halftime, then colleges can see that, and they can use that as a recruiting tool. So that is why we chose Pix-A-Lot. We think it's going to be a really good partnership, and we're really excited about getting these in our high school. Next slide. Now, any questions about this Pix-A-Lot, the season that Dr. Gordon and myself can answer, we certainly would be glad to be.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you very much. This is an information presentation. It does not call for action. This was information. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Lee. At this time, I'm going to take a point of privilege. Before we get into the resolutions, I would like, and we're going to have the clerk read our next set of resolutions. But before that, we had, in addition, Mr. Mitnick asked if we would add something under new business. So Mr. Mitnick, would you like to speak now? Or would you like to hold your comments for board comments?
No, I can do it now. I can do it now.
Okay. The chair recognizes Mr. Mitnick.
Each board member will be receiving a copy of this as soon as the board meeting is over. I have distributed it already to Dr. Brooks-Buck and Ms. Byram and Dr. Gordon and Mr. Waller. Dear Dr. Brooks-Buck, Chair, Suffolk City School Board, I am informing you that effective January 15, 2021, I will be resigning as school board member representing Sleepy Hole Borough. As you are aware, I have multiple medical conditions, including a degenerative neuromuscular disorder. I've had to acknowledge that some symptoms are continuing to progress. Therefore, I am in a position of needing to resign. When I ran for re-election in November, I was ignoring the signs that were accumulating. It took me a while to acknowledge that. Now is the right time to resign to preserve my health. It has been my honor to represent the citizens of Sleepy Hole Borough for the past 6 years. I wish you and the board well as you continue to build the best Suffolk Public Schools. Sincerely, David P. Mitnick, School Board Member, Sleepy Hole Borough. And Dr. Brooks-Buck, I don't know if it's an action item or what happens at this point.
Mr. Waller.
Dr. Brooks-Buck and Chair and board members, it is an action item. The board should take a vote to accept the letter of resignation from Board Member Mitnick.
Madam Chair, I move we accept the resignation of Mr. Mitnick from the school board effective January 15th.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the resignation of Mr. David Mitnick, board member from Sleepy Hole. Board members, please prepare to vote. Board clerk, Ms. Gardner.
Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
With sorrow, and I hate to see you go, Mr. Mitnick, and I vote yes.
Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks-Buck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Board members, I know this is out of order, and I know we'll make comments at the end. So if you would hold your comments until the end. I don't think I want to make mine just now. Mr. Mitnick, you and I sat beside each other for quite a few years, worked together, rode together, and went through some things together. So I'll hold my comments for right now. We're going to go on with the meeting. Madam Clerk, would you read resolution, item number 5, resolution?
Okay.
20/21-11.
Okay. A resolution of the School Board of the City of Suffolk, Virginia, adopting a code of ethics for members of the Suffolk City School Board. Whereas as a member of the Suffolk City School Board, hereinafter referred to as school board, it is important that each member of the school board strive to be an advocate for students and to improve public education. And whereas each member of the school board will have integrity in all matters and support the full development of all children and the welfare of the community, Commonwealth of Virginia, and nation. And whereas each member of the school board will attend school board meetings and seek to be informed concerning issues under consideration. And whereas each member will make policy decisions based on the available facts and appropriate public input. And whereas each member of the school board understands that the authority for the administration of the school is vested in the superintendent, and the superintendent is responsible for establishing a process of accountability for administrators. And whereas each member of the school board will seek to encourage individual school board member expressions of opinion, and will also seek to facilitate an open two-way communication process with all segments of the community. And whereas each member of the school board agrees to communicate to the full school board and superintendent in accordance with school board policies, public reaction, and opinion regarding school board policies and school programs. And whereas each member of the school board will seek to encourage desired changes through legal and ethical procedures in accordance with all laws, state regulations, and court orders pertaining to schools. And whereas each member of the school board agrees to not use the position of school board member for personal or partisan gain, and will seek to avoid any conflict of interest or the appearance of impropriety. And whereas each member of the school board will respect the confidentiality of privileged information and will make no individual decisions or commitments that might compromise the actions of the school board or school administration. And whereas each member of the school board will seek to be informed about current educational issues through individual study and participation and inappropriate programs, such as those sponsored by the Virginia School Board Association and the National School Board Association. And whereas each member of the school board will always remember that the foremost concern of the school board is to improve and enhance the teaching and learning experience for all students in the public schools of Virginia. Be it resolved, therefore, that each member of the school board will strive to demonstrate appropriate behavior and or conduct as a school board member, and that each member of the school board has indicated their agreement with this resolution and has affixed their signature to the same this 14th day of January 2021.
Board members, this is an action item. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the code of ethics for members of the Suffolk City School Board.
May I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we adopt the code of ethics for school board members. Board members.
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Starr.
Board
That's
member,
all right.
Board member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board member Mayo?
Yes.
Board member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board member Riddick?
Yes.
Board member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chair Byram? Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item number 6, resolution of the School Board of the City of Suffolk, Virginia, adopting a code of conduct for the clerk of the Suffolk City School Board. Would you read the resolution?
A resolution of the School Board of the City of Suffolk, Virginia, adopting a code of conduct for the school board clerk of Suffolk City School Board. Whereas, as a clerk of the Suffolk City School Board, hereinafter referred to as school board, it is important the clerk of the school board strive to be an advocate for students and to improve public education. And whereas the clerk of the school board shall have integrity in all matters and support the full development of all children and the welfare of the community, Commonwealth of Virginia, and nation. And whereas the clerk of the school board should keep correct and proper records of all proceedings of the school board and shall prepare such reports and keep such accounts as are required by the Code of Virginia. And whereas the clerk of the school board will notify the Virginia School Boards Association of the names of newly elected or appointed school board members in a timely manner. And whereas the clerk of the school board will come to school board meetings informed concerning the issues under consideration. And whereas the clerk of the school board will communicate in accordance with board policies, public reaction and opinion regarding board policies and school programs to the school board and superintendent. And whereas the clerk of the school board will refrain from using the clerk position for personal or partisan gain and avoid any conflict of interest or the appearance of impropriety. And whereas the clerk of the school board will respect the confidentiality of privileged information and make no individual decisions or commitments that might compromise the school division. And whereas the clerk of the school board will be informed about current educational issues through individual study and participation in appropriate programs, such as those sponsored by the Virginia School Board Association and the National School Board Association. And whereas the clerk of the school board will always remember that the foremost concern of the school division is to improve and enhance the teaching and learning experience for all students in the public schools of Virginia. Be it resolved, therefore, that the clerk of the school board will strive to demonstrate appropriate behavior and or conduct as a school board clerk, and I have indicated my agreement with this resolution and has affixed my signature to the same this 14th day of January 2021.
Thank you. This is an action item. May I have a
Move to
motion?
approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chair Byram?
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item number 7, resolution 20/21-13. A resolution of the school board for the city of Suffolk, Virginia, authorizing the chair of the school board to arrange training for board member Sherry D. Story in the areas of management or leadership, to include training relative to maintenance of confidentiality of certain school board matters and racial sensitivity training as recommended in the investigative report. This is an action item.
Madam
Move to
Chair.
approve.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
It has been
Madam
moved and
Chair, I would like to speak to this resolution, please.
Let me finish and then I will acknowledge you, Ms. Story.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Ms. Story
Yes.
would like to be recognized. Ms. Story?
Thank you. So I have considered a response to this resolution regarding the investigation. There were 2 allegations that the investigation was considered on, that I created a hostile work environment for Dr. Gordon, and secondly, it was based on racial animus. This investigation that the resolution refers to fully exonerated me from both allegations. In fact, the attorneys, after digging up and researching thousands of documents from emails and all my personnel files, and after the attorneys were paid handsomely to take hours and hours of testimony from 21 hand-chosen accusers to testify against me, The undisputed result was that the attorneys had to report that not one piece of actual evidence could be found to substantiate the two claims of this investigation. So in my book of life, that's pretty darn amazing. Considering all the digging through emails and personnel files, some that I didn't even know existed, and the overwhelming odds put up against me to come up with nothing concrete except perceptions and feelings was very satisfying to myself, to my family, and friends. If I had been allowed even one person to testify on my behalf, other than myself, the investigators would have heard the same thing, that I have never ever said and or written anything racist, nor been involved in any conversations that would point towards me being labeled a racist in my personal life, in my professional life, and in my spiritual life. Mr. Riddick and Dr. Brooks-Buck, unfortunately, you both have flat out called me a racist. In fact, twice by you, Mr. Riddick. Using such inflammatory terms as a direct object has the intent of causing a person harm, to
Madam
insult
Chair,
me,
call for the question.
to intimidate me,
The question
to
has
demean and
been
assault
called,
my
Mrs.
character. In my opinion, this was the
Story.
epitome of verbal
Mrs.
abuse.
Story, the question has been called. Madam Clerk, the question has been called. The question has been called.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story.
No, that was out of order,
Thank
and
you.
it's an abuse.
You
I
have
can say
already-
why.
you have
I
been given
can't
the
say why. I
opportunity
say
to
no. That was an abuse of the use of the call of the question. And if you look in Robert Rules of Order, it's only supposed to be used when everyone is done contributing. So I say no, but I will continue during my comment time.
Thank you. Your time is finished. Mrs. Story, this was not an opportunity for you to give a lecture to everyone and make accusations. The report is available to the public. I vote yes.
Thank you. Board Chair Brooks-Buck, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Byram,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Number 8, Resolution 20/21-14, a resolution of the school board for the city of Suffolk, Virginia, directing the Policy Review Committee to review current policies of the school board and make policy recommendations that will protect the confidentiality of closed meeting discussions. This is an action item.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that resolution 20-21-14, resolution of the school board for the city of Suffolk, directing the Policy Review Committee to review current policies of the school board and make recommendations that will protect the confidentiality of closed meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Board members, please vote. Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
No.
Vice Chair Byron,
Yes.
Board Chair Brooks-Buck,
Yes.
motion passed.
We have public speakers on non-agenda items. I believe that they have written letters.
That is
Okay,
correct. The deputy clerk will read the letters.
thank you.
Unmute your mic, Ms. Hicks. I'm sorry, maybe she's having technical difficulties. We have a couple of letters. The first two letters, Karen Hurd and Breon Eilenberg, they submitted the same exact letters. So we'll just read the one letter.
Read it once, please. Thank you.
Okay. To the Suffolk Public School Board. As a taxpayer and grandparent / parent in Suffolk, I am writing to demand that Suffolk Public School Board use fundamental accounting principles and immediately submit in their 2021-2022 budget. 1, line item budgets / expenditures per school, and 2, line item budget per district department. The Suffolk Public School Board is a public servant. Open accountability and transparency is a duty of the Suffolk Public School Board to the citizens of Suffolk. Follow the best practices of school board finance as suggested by the Virginia School Board Association. That's from Karen Hurd and Breon Eilenberg. We have another letter from Deborah Cleach, and I may be mispronouncing that name, I'm sorry. Hello, Suffolk School Board. As a taxpayer in Suffolk, I am writing to demand that the Suffolk Public School Board use fundamental accounting principles immediately in their 2021-2022 budget. I have only lived in Suffolk for 1 year, but I find the lack of transparency regarding the use of taxpayer dollars completely unacceptable. The city I formerly lived in had parent accountability committees in each school, plus a parent accountability committee for the entire school district. The district's budget was open for public inspection, as was each school's budget. Since Suffolk Public Schools are taxpayer funded, Suffolk should function in a similar manner. We, the taxpayers, need 1, line item budgets / expenditures per school. 2, line item budget per district department. Open accountability and transparency is a duty of the Suffolk Public School Board to the citizens of Suffolk. The board and district should follow the best practices of school board finance as suggested by the Virginia School Board Association. Sincerely, Deborah Cleach. And we have one more letter from Miller Carey. My name is Miller Carey. Even as this governing body immerses itself in political warfare with Mrs. Story, Suffolk students, school employees, parents, taxpayers, and businesses all suffer from your apparent refusal to do the work necessary to improve our schools. Laws governing the methods by which you do or do not do the business of our school system are put in place to ensure best practices. When your failures become so egregious that an elected board member must file a lawsuit to effect compliance with these laws, there is a problem. Circuit Court Judge Easton overwhelmingly agreed with when he lectured not just the citizens in the room about why FOIA is so important to protect the integrity of government processes, but also this entire board, except Mrs. Story, whom he overwhelmingly supported in her crusade. And now how does this school board respond to their expensive education in circuit court? The same way it does with all of its other professional trainings. It goes right back to disregarding best practices and right back to the behavior that landed you in court the last time. But no, let's not stop there. Let's literally throw good money after bad and pay to appeal the judge's clear and inevitable ruling that ordered the board and its attorney to undergo training in FOIA laws and guidelines. Further, let's pay $50,000 for an investigation into whether Mrs. Story creates a hostile workplace with racism. This study, as you all understand, found nothing of the sort. Your consolation prize, though, for spending $50,000 on no findings of racism was that the report did include that there is a perception of racism. A nice way of noting that your unfounded accusations exist, even though they remain unfounded. Now, in a vengeful, defiant, wasteful, and ironic follow-up, you're discussing recommendations for Mrs. Story to undergo training for a problem a $50,000 investigation didn't even show exist, even as you continue to take responsibility for the illegal behavior that landed the rest of the body court-ordered training for actual illegal activity. I said it last year and I'm saying it again. Stop screwing around, stop playing games, and get your own self in line. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all?
That's the end of the letters, yes.
Thank you very much. At this time, we have comments by board members. And at this time, not at the end or in the middle of a vote, board members may make comments. Each board member will be given the opportunity to make comments. I would ask that before board members make comments, you be respectful of one another. Don't make unfounded accusations. Remember that what you say, you will be held accountable for, and it should be factual. That's what I ask as your chair. So we'll begin to make comments. Mr. Mitnick, I know this is out of alphabetical order, but if you would like to make more comments, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks-Buck. More than anything, I'd just like to make some acknowledgements. First, I'd like to acknowledge the constituents of Sleepy Hole Borough. I appreciate their support over the last 6 years and sending me to the school board on 3 different occasions. The first election was a special election to fill the seat of Diane Foster. And I'm very grateful for the constituents. I've gotten to know so many people in Sleepy Hole Borough, and it's really, I'm just so pleased that I've had their support. The next group I'd like to acknowledge is the school board members, those who were present in 2015 when I first came on the board, and those that have joined us in 2018. When I meet people, I always look for what I can take away from the relationship. And for each of you, and Dr. Dobransky, and Mr. Copeland, and Miss Bouchard, and God rest her soul, Miss Skeeter, they were the ones who molded me as a school board member. And I was so appreciative, along with Dr. Brooks-Buck and Ms. Byram, for the board members in 2015 to guide me and to help me learn along the way. And when the 4 board members resigned in 2018, I was glad to get to meet Ms. Mayo and Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Riddick and Ms. Story, in addition to the other board members. And again, I looked for something that I could take away from the relationship, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to work with all the school board members, both in 2015 and in the 2018 group. Next, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Gordon and his entire cabinet for their patience that they have shown with me and their attention to detail as they answered my questions along the way. And along with thanking Dr. Gordon, I'd also like to thank Dr. Whitney. Again, he was the superintendent when I came on the board. Some special acknowledgements I'd like to make. First is to our board clerk, Tarsha, who does an amazing job of keeping everything together and keeping us all straight and letting us know where we're supposed to be and when. To John Littlefield, since I went virtual in March, Mr. Littlefield has done an amazing job to make sure that I have everything that I need and I'm able to communicate with the rest of you. And I thank him. To my babysitter for so many school board meetings, Mr. Anthony Hines, And at one school board meeting, Miss Julie Master, I thank you for the time that you put in to making sure that I was able to participate in the school board meetings. You were all appreciated for the work that you did. And to the members of the Suffolk City Public School community, I thank you all for what you do for making us and helping us build the best Suffolk Public Schools. Thank you for your attention to my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. Ms. Mayo, would you unmute yourself? Ms. Mayo?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Brooks Buck. First of all, I would like to say to Mr. Mitnick that I really enjoyed working with you, although I didn't get an opportunity to work with you very long. I enjoyed our times with Mrs. Jenkins, and when the three of us would meet for our pupil personnel committee meetings, and we had an opportunity to bond and to talk and to get to know each other. And then, of course, you were my partner when we were doing in-person meetings to my right, and we would talk and enjoy each other's company. I want to thank you for your service, and you genuinely do care about the students, and you care about Suffolk Public Schools, and you are to be commended for that. I wish you well in all of your endeavors, and stay safe and healthy, and just enjoy the rest of your time away from the board and whatever other plans that you have that will be coming down in your life. And best wishes to you, and Godspeed. I would like to continue to say congratulations to our superintendent for that wonderful appointment by Governor Northam on the Education Commission of the states. We are most proud of you and this accomplishment. And it says a lot for Suffolk Public Schools too, because it helps us to put us on the map as well, that our superintendent has received such an important position. And we thank you for your excellent work and your leadership. You're doing a phenomenal job to your staff, your team at the SAO, your dedicated team. We thank you. And as always, I always like to thank our school administrators for your hard work, our hardworking teachers, and especially our special ed teachers who are doing the in-person learning with our students. We want to thank all of you for your hard work. Our support staff, teacher assistants, bus drivers, custodial staff, cafeteria personnel, anyone who has a part in Suffolk Public Schools, we thank you so very much. To the teachers that were spotlighted for part of our spotlight, thank you for your dedication to the profession and to our students. Very proud of Forest Glen, which is in my borough, for that wonderful grant to enhance the communication media and various things that need to be done at Forest Glen. And then there's more good news about the vaccines that are being made available to Suffolk Public Schools employees. And I see this as a step in helping our school division to move towards some normalcy. And our goal, hopefully, and there is hope for in-person learning. So we're going to look to that. Could not leave without saying thank you to Andre Skinner. And thank you, as the young people say, thank you for the shout out. And you were certainly my student, and I'm most proud of you. And I'm proud of our CTE program and the opportunities that it gives to our students. Your enthusiasm, your energy, your love for the students in Suffolk Public Schools, it's evident in what you do. And so I'm most grateful for you and what you do for the program, and to all of the teachers and Mrs. Burgess over at CCAP. We are most proud of that program. Well, I guess I've rattled on for a while, but I just wanted to thank all of you, and then I would like to wish everyone a most prosperous new year. And 2021, this is going to be our year when we get back to some normalcy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. I just want to start off by saying, Mr. Mignett, thank you for all that you've done for Suffolk Public Schools. We share some of the same schools, and whenever I go in, I always hear about what a wonderful volunteer you have been in the schools to help the administrators out, the teachers, as well as the students. And I just want you to know, I know they really appreciated that, and I do as well. And I wish you well on whatever you plan. You're going on vacation. I don't know if you're going to Disney World or whatever now that you're retired from everything, but I wish you well, and I wish you much, much good health in the years to come. So thank you so much for all that you've done for Suffolk Public Schools. Also, I'd like to piggyback on Mrs. Mayo. Congratulations to our superintendent for that amazing appointment. You know, you just can't, you can't stop what's for you. We hired you because we were so impressed by your resume and your interview. And so we knew that you were already doing great things and that you would bring great things to our school district, and you have not let us down. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And we continue to look forward to even greater things. And congratulations to all of the teachers that made the December spotlight. We appreciate everything that you have done as well to earn that spotlight. And I just want to say thank you to all the staff, just like Mrs. Mayo said, anyone that's involved with anything with Suffolk Public School. Your position to me is no less than anybody else's position. We can't be a great school system without you. So whatever you do, whatever capacity, it's needed and it's appreciated. And we thank you so much. And it is my hope and my prayer that we as individual board members come together as board members, as a team, that we can work together and continue to help and be a blessing to the students by the decisions we make, which impacts their families, our administrative staff, our teachers, and our support staff. We are here to make the best decisions for all of you to continue to have the best SPS that we can have. And I appreciate all of you and everything. I appreciate the board members, and we're going to get this thing together, and we're going to come on one accord for the better of the students and everyone that's involved with Suffolk Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Story. Mrs. Story.
I am going to continue. It is too bad. I really wanted this to be associated with the motion that went with the resolution. And, but I am going to continue. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of time taken where you all have had your say, and I have refrained from much, but I also have a First Amendment right to speak. And now I'm going to speak. Dr. Gordon, I have not created a hostile work environment for you, in my opinion. I am one voice of 7. I am one vote of 7. You have been allowed by this board to take over the district and do whatever you would like when it comes to hiring. You have been given the privilege to spend money up to a legal limit. You have been given the authority to pretty much do what you want during this COVID, and I voted for some of that. This is not a hostile work environment. I have one vote and one voice. You were able to even get this board to not use my evaluation of you. This certainly isn't a hostile board or work environment. This board, in doing so, abdicated their oversight. You might say they've rolled over and played dead for you, especially when it comes to holding you accountable to contractual agreements with Suffolk Public Schools and student achievement. I'd say, from my opinion, you've been awarded tremendous favor, and it is anything but a hostile work environment. The investigators agreed with me, and although I'm not sure why it took $55,000 to see the obvious, I believe it is the proper time for right now for me to address, it is the proper time and place, being that now this investigation was put in the Suffolk News Herald, to address the editor, Tracy Agnew. When I endured my public censure, which I will argue at a later time and place, that was a gross overstep of power by the board, unsanctioned by the state legislators. You, Ms. Agnew, wrote in the Suffolk News Herald editorial that I needed to defend myself from the accusations. I understood what you were saying. I understood where you were coming from. I have always found you to be fair. However, once the charges were slanderously made, then what I wanted to say and was able to say and to come back and say was only to try to prove a negative. The best I could say at that time was, I am not a racist. I never did these things that Mr. Riddick or others accused me of. But as the irony of life would have it, I offer this defense to you now, Mrs. Agnew. You and I now have a very expensive and professional investigation done by one of the most reputable law firms in the nation that is worth a minimum of $55,000 of taxpayer money as proof positive that not one of the 21 people chosen to bring their best accusations against me could actually produce proof of my being a racist. And Mr. Riddick's accusation of me using the M word to a group of students was absolutely bogus. Ms. Agnew, this is more evidence and proof that I could have ever given you at the time on my own when you asked for it. But it is pretty ironic that I now have the board to thank for this extensive proof. On the other hand, I want to express total regret to the taxpayers of Suffolk and to our city council that this exorbitant amount of money was spent in this way. It was not covered by insurance, so this money had to be taken from some district account to personally persecute me, to go on a fishing expedition that produced what for helping SPS students? Absolutely nothing. Now, the particular resolution that was on the table addresses some training for me. And it certainly was purposely written with racial overtones. Therefore, I feel I need to respond to the 3 specific items in the investigation that accused me of targeting people due to race. I would like the public to consider these accusations in a context of the narrative. First, the accusation that I have questioned the cleanliness of our school building in order to target custodial staff because they are mostly African American. This is false. It is one of the most egregious accusations without any context. Since I have been on the board, there has never been one custodian to come to the podium and speak regarding how clean the buildings are or are not. Nor have I ever disagreed with a custodian personally, not one. I have never referred to any custodian by name or complained about any custodian by name. But I have challenged the reporting of Mr. Napier, sometimes with visual evidence that I saw in our buildings, sometimes with reports that I received from teachers in the buildings, and sometimes I have questioned whether the list of items he said occurring daily or weekly were actually occurring. Yes, I have questioned those reports. and he has always answered well. But the last time I observed Mr. Napier, he's Caucasian, and I assume he is still Caucasian. And so the truth of my questioning the cleanliness of our buildings had to be spun for the report because it didn't fit the race narrative the board was looking for. Second, evaluations were brought up as if I evaluated our appointees based on race. But I noticed Ms. Gardner's evaluation was not mentioned in the report. She is African American and an appointee, and I did evaluate her this year. Why wasn't her evaluation brought up? Because I gave her a nearly perfect score, or maybe it was perfect. And again, this was not mentioned in the report because it didn't fit the narrative the board was looking for. Third, I want you, the public, to consider the narrative that 6 board members reported about me, seemingly attempting to physically attack Dr. Gordon in a closed session. I just want the community to think on these facts. Dr. Gordon, I don't know, I'm guessing you're about 6'4". I'm 5'2". He is practically taller seated than I am standing up. He is 47 years old and in the prime of life, and I'm 67, not so much the prime. He works out every day and is obviously very fit, not a pound overweight, I assume, and he takes great pride in this. I don't blame him. I would too. I do not work out much anymore at all, let alone every day. I'm probably about 50 pounds overweight, and I have 2 artificial knees and arthritic hands and shoulders. Now, given these stats, does anyone in the community really believe the scenario that was described? As if I was looking to attack Dr. Gordon, me, the aggressor? Does this even seem logical or probable or reasonable? I can't even sit down or stand up without my knees cracking and sounding like an orchestra. Dr. Gordon, if I had been you, and this is just me talking, I would have never allowed such a thing to be said or printed. If I were you again, this is just me, it would have been embarrassing as someone who obviously prides themselves in being in very good shape, to say that this 60-year-old grandma out of shape somehow intimidated you. That's just me. It was Mr. Riddick in an open part of the school board meeting who provided this improbable scenario that had taken place. And yet I noticed in the resolution after this one that his name did not pop up in terms of revealing things that happened in closed session. Yet once again, this board has provided evidence for me and for the community of totally prejudicial dealings against me personally. This resolution concerns training. When I asked what outcome the board was looking for, it was Mr. Weller who responded that the board was counting on the law firm giving some advice about what they hoped they could do with me. This was said prior to the investigation, and I'm sure at the time the board was hoping for very different results that could have led to something much different and bigger than sending me to leadership training. I understand. As my fellow board members consider this training, I would like to say to spend any more money on this inquisition is absolutely unconscionable. I am one voice. I am one vote. It will not change my voting, which I base on my value system, my educational training, and my conscience. As if the out-of-budget money that was spent already isn't enough wasted tax dollars, I want the Suffolk City Council to take note of any additional money spent on this railroaded witch hunt targeting one member of the school board. In terms of training, let's talk about equity. You know, that's one of the biggest buzzwords in education at this very moment, equity and equality. I will volunteer to attend any free training as soon as there has been an equitable study done to determine if any one of you have created for me a hostile work environment, whether you have defamed my character to to inhibit my influence and ideas? Or have you done anything to slander my reputation in public? I want an equitable and equal opportunity to choose 21 people to come and testify in an investigation, to have evidence presented to attorneys to investigate whether a biased and hostile environment has and was set up to target me from before day one, thereby demonstrating a willful intent to intimidate and inhibit my abilities to carry out my duties as an elected official who represents 14,000 residents of the Chuckatuck Borough. Allow me the same equitable latitudes to choose the law firm, to set the cost. Let us see what type of report might be written. As soon as this equitable investigation is complete, I'm more than willing to discuss attending a training, perhaps for you and I. One last note. If I had been allowed in the closed session where the board was given multiple copies of this investigation that were being discussed and edited, I want to say this to you, Dr. Gordon. I would have fought hard for the entire report not to be released at the end of the day. Not for me. I don't think the board did you any favors. I don't know if you were part of the decision. I suspect you probably were, but I cannot see any advantage for you long-term. Perhaps you make hay with it in this culture for a short time, 2 to 4, 6 years maybe, but cultures shift, and this will be out there forever. When someone Googles your name, I would strongly have fought to not release the full report for your career's sake. It doesn't hurt mine, my career is done, but it could hurt yours going forward. And for that, I'm sorry. I think it was a bad decision by this board. Thank you, Madam Chair, for time to speak to the resolution, although it wasn't at that time. I would now like to address Mr. Mitnick. Mr. Mitnick, I will miss you on the board. I'm sorry to see you leave. I know that health conditions can certainly hinder our ability to work, but I will miss you. We had a lot of good fun sometimes and texting back and forth, and I'm really sorry that it turns out to be physical things that keep you, because that's very difficult if you have a progressive disease. I am so sorry, but I will miss you. And I hope that we know each other's phone numbers and we can continue to have a relationship in text. As for some of the good things that came and were reported to the board, I agree with many of what my colleagues said. There are some very good things happening. I am really impressed with the work that is being done, certainly by many of our staff. So I agree with my board members. They have brought up a lot of good things. I want to bring up one thing that a citizen texted me just to look at. It seems that on the calendars, perhaps the day for elections was not considered, because I do think the governor called for it to be a holiday. Is that true? And that we should have it off. But I see Dr. Gordon shaking his head, so it might not be true. But I just thought I'd bring it up. And if it's not a state holiday that has to be off, so be it. I just wanted to bring it up here, bring it up now. We have some, I think we're going to have a lot of decisions and a lot of unrest yet coming because of COVID. Dr. Gordon, I was truly impressed that you were able to get vaccines, and that Suffolk is handing them out in January. I think it's phenomenal, and I give you kudos on your part for, however you were able to arrange that for our staff and teachers. I think that's absolutely excellent. So that was a surprise email, and I was very glad to see it. So whatever you had to do to get that, thank you very much for being very on top of it to help our staff be safe and healthy. I hope everyone has a good, we will be gathering, I believe, next, probably before our next board meeting at the board meeting that is joint to I look forward to the joint board meeting between the board and the school board to hear what the report is in terms of looking forward and what may be built for Suffolk Public Schools and how we can best accommodate our students. So I look forward to that meeting, that joint meeting next. Now, I must say that I unfortunately once again have my son-in-law and daughter now both in a bed side by side in the shock trauma center in Baltimore. And I've been receiving a lot of texts throughout the board meeting. And my daughter is headed back to surgery. She has an infection in her arm that she might lose her left arm. So I'm going to sign off. I really need to take these texts, and I wish everyone a good next of the month, and that we can move forward. Hopefully finding, as Ms. Jenkins said, some common areas to help Suffolk Public Schools be the best. So I'm going to sign off now and wish you the best. Thank you.
Well, I wish her the best, Ms. Story.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brooks-Buck. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Riddick.
Well, there's so much I could say, but I'm digressed and not say.
The last half hour, so go right ahead.
Right, I know. I'm gonna keep mine short, sweet, straight to the point. I'm not gonna address theatrics, but I do want to say that it has been a rewarding year thus far, despite some of the inner turmoil that we're going through, and I'm praying that God's will be done and some things would work itself out. But Mr. Mitnick, I do want to say you will be missed. I came on the Suffolk Education Foundation after you, and from talking to some of the long-term Education Foundation board members, your footprint will be forever engraved into the Suffolk Education Foundation. I want to say thank you for all the work you have done for Suffolk Public Schools, and I know you're retiring from the board. However, I know you're still going to be active as much as you possibly can. I wish you well, and if there's anything I could do, please don't be a stranger, reach out. In regard, I can't speak for the board. I'll leave that to the board chair and co-chair, but I will speak for myself. I'm a man of integrity, and I operate that, and everything I said, I can back it up. So that's all I'm going to say to that. Dr. Gordon, you have done a remarkable job, and you've done such a great job that you was chosen out of all of the superintendents in the state to represent us. And we want to say thank you. Thank you to the former chair, Ms. Barham, and the other board members for moving swiftly to operate in the capacity to protect this board. And that's what you all did, and I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to our current chair, Dr. Brooks-Buck, for her wonderful way of handling this meeting. I look forward to many meetings to come, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Byram, Vice Chair Byram.
Thank you, Dr. Buck. I say ditto to applauding Dr. Gordon. I think we are really lucky and fortunate to have such a professional, well-known and well-respected superintendent. Governor Northam chose wisely, and I think it's a great recognition for us as a school system as well as for Dr. Gordon. And I know I look forward to other announcements that will propel Dr. Gordon to better positions. I want to thank Andre Skinner for his comments this evening. I've known Andre for a long time, and I know it came from his heart, what he said to Ms. Mayo and myself. Ms. Mayo, I think, guided him in his elementary years, and I tried to help him and assist him in his high school years. And I want him to know that I will always be his proudest cheerleader. He's a product of Suffolk Public Schools, a graduate of Nansemond River, and an outstanding employee. And he always does a top-rate job. And Andre knows that I am his #1 cheerleader. I want to especially thank our team, everyone that's involved in Suffolk Public Schools. We cannot be as successful as we are without each of you. I think Ms. Mayo alluded to that. And it is very important that you realize that we appreciate every one of you. From top to bottom, every person works diligently and we accomplish a lot. And I think we should look at all the positive things that are going on in Suffolk Public Schools. And addressing Mr. Mitnick, I've known you for quite a number of years. I know you've served on the board for 6 years. I was here when you came, and I'm still here. And I want to thank you personally for all of the devotion you've had during the years. I think several mentioned your Suffolk Education Foundation. I know you organized and helped with a lot of golf tournaments. You organized spelling bees. I know in particular the first spelling bee, I think you even were responsible for the wording, the words that were used. You spent countless hours working on scholarships for our students and also for grants in the classroom for our teachers.
Is she frozen for you all as well?
Phyllis, are you Ms. Byram? I think she's frozen.
Ms. Gardner's going to go next door and check Dr. Brooks.
Okay.
And Ms. Jenkins and others enjoyed working with you as alternates on that as well. I know the volunteering.
They can hear you. You were frozen.
Oh, I am.
You were. Can you hear her?
Now we can.
Now you can. I thank you for volunteering in the schools. The teachers and the students are going to really miss you. And I know you're going to miss that as well because you enjoyed it so much. And I want to think also about the time before COVID. Once there was a time before COVID, and Mr. Mitnick used to be our driver. And he and I went to a lot of conferences and events together. And I want to thank you for those times when we shared and when we fellowshipped. And I learned a little bit about David P. Mitnick. And I thank you again, Dave, for all you've done for Suffolk Public Schools. And I will keep in touch. Thank you, Dave.
And Mr. Mitnick, I guess I'm last, and that's probably good. I could get myself together. I want to say this to you. You and I definitely don't always agree, and that's all right, because we can agree without being disagreeable. We can disagree without being disagreeable. We have had some times, we've written meetings together, we've talked together, we've disagreed and agreed, and we even had the nerve to have a town hall. David said, let's have a town hall. And I'm thinking, is he out of his mind? Does he really want to talk to these people together face to face in a cafeteria who might be mad at both of us? But we did it, and it was successful. And I think we came away thinking different things, but we got it done and we did it together. And I was really excited. One time I was performing on stage at Chrysler Hall in Norfolk, and I got this text when I got off stage. I got this text from somebody. I looked down at my phone, and it was from David saying he and his wife Doris were in the audience, and he said, you did a good job. And I thought, oh, okay. And I realized that he was in the audience there. We've sat by each other for years and worked together on PPC and on several other committees for Suffolk Public Schools. So I'm really going to miss you. And I talked to him about whether he really wanted to leave or not. But I understand when it's your health, and I want you to do the best that you can for you and your wife and family and spend your time doing what you can for yourself. But I want you to know that you've done a good job for us, and we do appreciate it. We really do appreciate it. And we're going to show you that in a while. It might take us a while to get ourselves together, but we will get ourselves together. You and I got chastised a little bit about by one of the board members who had been on the board, the old board, not the new board, because we learned while we were sitting there together that we really weren't supposed to be in schools teaching reading. But I promised you, Dr. Gordon, we didn't go into schools to try to solicit any information from teachers. We were just going to school to teach reading. David liked to teach, and I did too. And I think he was working with the kids over the summer, teaching reading in one of the programs, and I was going to school volunteering, and then he was going to school. He was going to Creekside, and I was going to Northern Shores, and we were volunteering in the schools. We weren't doing anything untoward. We were just teaching reading, because he and I both like to do that. So I just want you to know we appreciate what you were doing. I never like to leave falsehoods in the neighborhood, and I wanted to make sure that the public understands this is a public venue that we're using. I want to correct some information. The report is online for people to read. There are people who will take away information and misconstrue it or misunderstand what the information says. The report does not say that everything was fine and nothing was found. It does not. The report on Mrs. Story says that there was harassment of an employee. When there is harassment of an employee, there's an obligation, and I am not the attorney, nor am I trying to play attorney, because I don't have a license to do that. But I do understand the report well enough, and I do understand the rules well enough, and I always lean to Mr. Waller if I think I'm going off track. I do understand the rules of employment well enough to know that if an employee complains about being harassed, the board has an obligation to examine the facts. And that's why, to the general public and anybody who wants to know, that's why the board had the obligation to examine the facts. That's why we spent taxpayer money, because we had no choice but to spend money to investigate a claim of employment discrimination. That's what we had to do. Now, the employment discrimination indicated that the discrimination upon race, based upon race, did not meet the legal definition based on the 4th District Court. And Mr. Waller, please correct me if I'm wrong. Based on the 4th District Court standards. But the recommendation that we have in the resolution that we made came directly from the report. We would not have made it had it not come from the report. So please understand very clearly that the steps that we're taking are based on the recommendations from the report. We did not make them up. They came from the report. And when our employees, just like any other employees for any other company, ask us to look at any kind of discrimination, work discrimination at work, or any kind of harassment at work, we are obligated as the largest employer in Suffolk, or any employer, to examine those charges and do what is necessary to mitigate any kinds of problems that exist. And that's what we have done. And we will continue to do that if that is the case. And yes, we are being sued again. So we need to know that. And we are going to deal with that in whatever way we need to deal with that. But the public needs to know that and be aware of that. But we're going to move on because we have some wonderful things happening in Suffolk. We realize we live in a diverse community and we have some great things going on. I know that everybody heard, so I'm not going to repeat them because we're going to get out of here by 10:30. We are not having any more midnight meetings if I have anything to do with it. We have some wonderful teachers who are moving along nationally and internationally. I heard the recognitions, so I won't repeat them. We want to thank our staff for doing what they're doing. Dr. Gordon, we are so proud of you. I am, elephant proud and hyena happy. So we are just really excited about what you're doing, what's going on in our school system. Mr. Waller, thank you so much for keeping us out of trouble. And we do appreciate it. We do appreciate all your efforts on our behalf. And we just thank you. We are going to send out the necessary information to the public. Mr. Waller is going to lead us and guide us in whatever we need to do. Mr. Mitnick, as we start the process to look for somebody to fill your shoes. And I can just tell you, it's going to be a difficult process. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Now, as we move on, the next items are informational. And unless someone has questions, are there any questions by board members? Any questions by board members about the informational items? Okay. Having seen no hands, heard no complaints, no questions, no anything. All minds are clear and all faces look happy. We will adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much. Have a blessed evening and Happy New Year. Bye, David.
Bye, Judith. Bye, Phyllis.
We'll be talking.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick.
Thanks, Tarsha.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.